Hello, everyone. Welcome to another VS Code live stream. Today is a very, very exciting live stream. Welcome, chat. My name's Olivia. I'm a cloud advocate on the VS Code team. If you're not familiar with our live streams, these are a great chance to come on and have a very interactive chat with our guests. And we have an amazing lineup today. So trust me, make sure you drop in your comments and questions in the chat and we'll get to them. Let me know where you're watching from. I love to see just where all of our developers are coming from. Like I mentioned, today's a very exciting live stream. We're going to be focusing all about extending agent mode in VS Code. You might be wondering, what does extending agent mode even mean? And if you haven't already used agent mode, I highly, highly recommend it. It is amazing. It is your autonomous peer programmer that can edit files for you. It can run terminal commands. It can even iterate on its own errors. It's very, very powerful. There are two ways that you can extend agent mode in VS Code. One is through MCP and one is with extensions. So today's live stream is going to be focusing a lot on MCP. We're going to be kicking things off with a discussion on MCP with David from Anthropic and Harald from the VS Code team. And then we'll do a couple of MCP server spotlights from Figma, Netlify, and Playwright. We'll also look at GitHub's roadmap for MCP. And we'll have VS Code engineers come on and actually talk about the latest MCP features in VS Code. And if that's not already enough, we also will be having an extension spotlight with Rob for the PostgreSQL extension, showing that in agent mode. So lots of really, really exciting stuff today. I want to just go ahead and get right to it. So today's also the day that our VS Code release is going out. And one of the really exciting updates there is that VS Code now supports the full MCP spec. And this is really, really great, but you might be wondering what exactly this means. So to kick us off, we're actually going to bring on David from Anthropic and Harald from the VS Code team to talk a little bit more about what MCP is and look forward in that space. Hey, David. Hey, Harald.
Hey.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. It's going to be a great day, and I'm really excited to have you all kick us off today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and have a great discussion.
Woo. Thanks, David, for joining. So super exciting. Just last minute wrote a blog post which is going out today about all the MCP stuff. I was like, oh man, this is like so long in the making to come together.
You need to send that over so I can take a look. I'm excited.
Yes, yeah, it's already in the VS Code docs repo. But we can talk about it too. So yeah, I'm curious about, from your perspective, like what you started on MCP a while ago. Like, what are you most excited about? Like, what's all recently happening? There's like just so much movement in the spec, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of movement in the spec, and to like maybe start people off a little bit is like, and I think that fits nicely into like where VS Code is now. Is MCP is way more than the tool use that most people know it for, and so there's been a lot of work outside of tool use in particular, but also partially in tool use of things that we are expanding, things that we have learned patterns from developers in the wild, things that we want people to use more, and so there's an informal group that we call the MCP steering committee that's getting together and has like really worked hard on the last 3-4 months since the last spec release, just to get to this nearly to the finish line of the current spec revision that now VS Code already like basically fully supports, which is really, really great.
Yeah, it's I did a talk kind of inspired by your talk on MCP Dev Summit last week at Engineering Conf, how it's more than tools, and it really resonated with people because I think there's a big misconception in the space on like what is MCP now versus what it's supposed to be and what it can do. You call out tools, maybe for background of, there might be people who don't know about MCP yet. If you talk about agent extensibility, it's like, what can it do and what can it see, kind of, and that's kind of where MCP is, that layer of just bringing these external things into agent mode. So tools is one way. It's like, how would you define like the different items that we have in MCP now?
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. So there's three main primitives. There's more, but there's three main primitives that MCP servers can expose to like an MCP client like VS Code. One is tools, as we just talked about, and I go into depth like, when do we want to use tools? What are they used for? There's a second thing called resources, and then there's a third thing called prompts or prompt templates. And what they really are about is about different interaction patterns. Tools are the most used ones because the ones that the model is supposed to call. So you are doing an interaction, you're going, having like an agentic loop or like an agent conversation with like with a model, and the model says, hey, I want to query a database, I want to go fetch a backtrace from like a remote service. That's a tool call, right? And that's what MCP is. What a lot of people use MCP currently for is having an abstract way to like build tools in the favorite programming language, plug it into VS Code, plug it into Cloud Desktop or whatever MCP client they want. Resources then, on the other hand side, they are meant for really the application to ingest. And so the application, be it VS Code, be it Cloud Desktop, can freely choose how do they want to interact with that resource. And I think that's how VS Code works, will use them basically like raw data for the context window that looks like a bit like a file that you can add. And that's, I think, very, very normal. We originally actually thought about it as a way for applications to do retrieval augmented generation over some of that raw input coming from the servers, but it's just one of the many ways. But basically, it's the application deciding. And then lastly, prompts or prompt templates are a way for MCP authors, server authors, to basically give the client a prompt that the user then can deliberately add into the context window by themselves. And so if you think about what makes like an agentic or like an AI application, it's like, it's an application, it's a user, and it's a model, right? And so we have three primitives for these three different surfaces. And that's like the basic server primitives at the moment that we're having. And that's just let's say like 70% of the specification. There's way more.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how it limits how people see MCP just from all the examples. So interesting to see like that growth happening, like how people think about resources, right? Because if you think about resource MCP right now, a lot of the things I notice can be done with tools, but can be done a lot better and more intuitive, and they save tokens, and they're more semantic, they're more contextual if you use the right tools. So maybe take a layer of like how VS Code did it with resources, they actually show up now in the add context menu. So you can add, like previously you would have said, oh, I want to talk about the GitHub issue XYZ, and please do something with it. Maybe read the comments and maybe create a plan for it. And now you can actually say, like, this is the resource I'm talking about. So which saves you probably 1 to 3 tool calls, depending how right the LM gets the first time. Like, oh, which project are you in? Which issue? So you just like, oh, I just wanted to look at the issue. And now you can do that because you have a resource that it's like a URL that you can point it to, which I think is great. And
yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because basically you can expose the same data 2 or 3 times. And I think that's quite interesting in a way. Even though, you know, one over a tool call, one over a resource, or one differently over a prompt, right? And it's just a matter of like how the user wants to interact with it.
Yeah, I think that's also from a, if you look in VS Code now, resources, you can actually click, and Connor will probably demo it later on, but now because we can actually have and subscribe to these changes, you could have a resource that the server returns, open it in VS Code, look at it, and that's I think what people as a semantic meaning that has to hit home of like everything you return a tool is basically for the LM. Like as a user, you might get eventually you get to see it because the LM tells you about it, but people struggle with that. I think like if Playwright returns an image, the LM will look at it. You can open it and see the image what returned, but it's an image for the LM. And I think resources like as something semantically more rich, like this is for the user to look at. This user can save it, the user can open it and do something with it. So that's what I'm excited about. I think that's why I'm like reaching out to all these MCP developers now. Like, you should think about this. Like, have you thought about returning X? Have you thought about like what is a resource? Like, could this be a resource, right? And then having tools on top to interact with these resources. So will be exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Give me a second. I'll close the window because my neighbor is going ham in the garden.
Always of his timings. Yeah. Gotta get rid of those leaves. And,
there we go. Yes. I hope it's better now.
It's a little better. Yeah. Curious about sampling. It's one of when we looked at our backlog, it's one of the most upvoted things, what people were excited about. Like, what excites you about sampling?
Yeah, sampling is such a good example, and I'm so happy that VS Code has it, because it's when we put sampling into the protocol originally, we were thinking about like, okay, if I want to build a really rich MCP server, let's say an MCP server that, for example, summarizes a Reddit thread or summarizes a GitHub discussion or something that requires an LLM interaction. And how do I go and get that? And sampling is the way to basically, from the server, go back to the client and say, you have a model configured. I don't know which model that is because I want to be model independent, but can you just give me a completion? Like, can you call the LLM for me and basically be the guard of the inference call, so to speak, and then give me back the result. And I can now build an MCP server that is not just what we see a lot now, which is just like pure data passing from backend APIs, but what can I do if I can actually have LLM like interactions on the MCP server side and build way richer interactions, build more agentic behaviors, and that's what sampling is for. And I think what we're missing at the moment is most clients don't implement it, and it's so good to have such a popular client come out and say, hey, we're doing sampling now, because now I'm actually just interested in what people can come up with doing, because the reality is like I have my use cases, but my use cases are very boring developer use cases and not like that creative thing that I've seen people do. And I'm looking forward to see what the community like has creatively in stock and is going to build with sampling, to be fair.
Yeah, I brought up with people, and at first it's like, what would I do? Because like you already get LM inputs when you use a cool tool. You could just like, this could be just a tool response, but if you think about, okay, if you do processing and then you do something else, like if you fetch a website, can you convert it to Markdown or can you extract it? Because we see so much right now in the MCP tooling space, and that's why where developers struggle. Suddenly it blows out the context window because it returns too much. So sampling can be really powerful to streamline, to make these tools more purposeful and atomic, right?
Like a good example is like, imagine you want to build an MCP server that wants to summarize a documentation for like, that's your favorite Rust crate or your favorite NPM module. Now you can like really use, the models to like summarize the parts that you care about the most and only return a small fraction of what you would have usually returned from a tool call, right? And that's what, to your point, you can now save tokens, and you can make the whole experience way richer in that regard.
Yeah, what's interesting actually that like being able to expose the LM surface already happened with extensions. We do have an extension API to language models, and client is actually using that, and to just have these like little AI powered features within VS Code. So for us, it has been a bit easier to catch up and just expose it to MCP as well, which is exciting. Generally, like looking forward. So there's a new iteration coming for the spec. Like what else is in the pipeline, and what's in that new cut we have ready?
Yeah, I think the new cut is, I would think it's like an evolutionary step rather than revolutionary steps. It's a lot of small changes, things that I think, as we have seen way more people build on MCP, way more use cases from local development to like big enterprises using it with remote servers. We have seen a lot of like rough edges that I think we knew we will have eventually, and so I think this spec iteration is a lot about cleaning this up and making like small adjustments. The big change at the moment, for example, would be on the authorization side. There is a clear separation between how MCP servers act as so-called resource servers, and then how they delegate over to an authorization server, such that enterprises can have a very good way to deploy MCP servers and have still a centralized identity provider, like be it like Azure or AD or something like Okta, and these type of things. That's one big part of the specification. There are additions such as like the structured tool outputs. The tools now can not just like return any type of data, but they can actually structure the data that they return in a way, and that opens the door down the line for some interesting compositions on the LLM side, and that's possible. And so there's a lot of these like smaller changes. I think the biggest change we're having is probably elicitation is a new addition. So that allows users to explicitly, on the MCP server side, to explicitly ask for user input on the client side. And I think that opens a lot of doors for more richer interactions. But so these are like, besides elicitation, it's really mostly smaller changes to make it very well-rounded and work really well. I think the next iteration that we hopefully see in the next 3 to 4 months then go make much bigger strides. And there's a lot of work in the pipelines already across like 2-3 main areas. I think the number one area will be like more work towards agentic behavior. So I think MCP is somewhat well suited for agentic work and like building agents, but there are some rough edges. For example, like there's no good facility of like how you deal with very long like running tasks at the moment in the protocol, and you can make it work, but it's slightly awkward to do it. And so we will build probably first-class primitives for that, for these type of things that we have observed people want in agents. And so we will build more towards like making MCP like really, really, really good for building agents and agents interoperability. I think that's one part. There's other aspects that we punted on, like streaming, that a lot of people want, streaming tool results and a bunch of other things that just very obvious things that the protocol should have, but they're hard to get right. And so this is probably coming in the next 3 months as well. We have a lot of work to do on security and on authorization still. There's a lot of work to do there. To be fair, I think that's a never-ending story for a protocol, but I think we need to make a lot of strides there, and there's a lot of like focused work there. And then lastly, we want to work on the protocol side, towards not really on the protocol side, but more on the project side, towards finding a way to have a central database of all existing MCP servers. So at the moment, we have these like 25 different registries. And what we really want is having one meta registry that then people can build into their products, be it, that vscode can show and have like a direct integration with. But I do want a centralized place so that server authors don't have to go to 35 different registries and register the server anymore. So those are the big changes that are coming in the next 3 months. So I think like now that we're in a very good state with the protocol, I think the next 3 months will be actually quite exciting to see what we'll bring into the spec.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see the scale. I think the registry, like with all the servers coming out, everybody experimenting, like from reference servers to becoming official servers, like the GitHub one. There's a lot of movement, even like the Playwright one had initially a community one, and now it became official. So a lot of companies are kind of jumping on. What do you feel like? What unlocks this scale? You already touched on auth. Like, what kind of gets MCP from like local little packages to everybody using MCP?
Yeah. I'm glad you're asking, because I forgot mentioning, but like obviously the biggest thing we're at the moment at, and this is really makes possible, is like the first 3-4 months of MCP, like from November on, was a very local experience. It was focused on local development with local servers. But now we bringing something into the specification called streamable HTTP, which is a transport way to really enable people to build MCP servers not locally only, but like remotely. And so we will and scale them very similar to traditional APIs. And so what we will hopefully see is an explosion of MCP servers that don't live locally anymore on your in a Docker container or an npm package that you need to trust and that you need to download and run, but see servers that are just a URL that you plug into VS Code, that you plug into your favorite client, and then they connect to it. And what this enables, like big companies that you already use, have online accounts with, to connect to, that you can connect to and use the LLM basically to interact with the data that you have there in a very natural way. And I think that really makes this go from a local experience to what I honestly hope is like an internet moment for MCP, right? Where like it becomes like the interface, like LLMs become the interface, and agentic interfaces become like the interface to all your data, all your online accounts, in a way, browsers and HTTP made this like long time ago for humans, right? And so I think that's a big step where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I feel it's when I talk to people, and I spent all of last week talking about MCP at engineering conference. Everybody is like, "Oh, I saw you talk. Like, it's so exciting. What is the future? Like, are local MCPs going away? Is it all remote now?" So I think my explanation that resonated was like, there's use cases you want to keep local, like if you interact with your containers, if you interact with like something in your code base. So I think for VS Code especially, there is a lot of local MCPs we want to see grow. So people should really like still, if you have something that needs to look at files or look at configurations or do something with files, and that's a lot of kind of the inner loop tools we already have. Like if you as a company already have a CLI that people can use to bootstrap, then that's a great case for like building out an MCP layer on top that makes this work easier. But then, for example, David Kramer from Sentry did a great talk at the engineering conf. Like they don't have any local tools. Like all of your observability data is in the cloud. So for them, make a remote server and be happy with it. You don't need that local context, but you just need to fill in like what's the data that fits with this code, and the LM can be that bridge, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly right. I think the local MCP servers will not go away. It's the right fit for a lot of development use cases, but you're absolutely right. I think Sentry is a great example for where you want to have a remote MCP server. Another example of this is like in all enterprises where you want to like have people connect to their local data source, like their data sources within the enterprise. You want these to be like remote servers more often than not, because then they can be observed, they can be maintained by a separate team and these type of things, and you don't have to deal with local installations, which can be a bit tricky in large enterprises. But for local developers, right, if you want to have an MCP server that accesses your Postgres database inside a Docker container, a local MCP server will always be the best choice. The same for Playwright and other servers, right? So it's very obvious that I think for developers in particular, MCP servers that will still remain probably mostly local.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you have a whole captive audience on that's like one part is probably starting to figure out like how do I best use MCP.
Yeah.
Another part might be like how do I automate all my problems now with MCP? Kind of what are your main recommendations for them to be successful with MCP?
I think the main recommendation is, first of all, just build. Like I think if you think about specifications and protocols, it can look very daunting. In the end of the day, it's actually very simple. And with the SDKs, be it the C# SDK, be it the Java SDK, Python, TypeScript SDKs, and all these other SDKs we have, it's very, very easy to, even using an LLM to build your first MCP server within like probably 10-15 minutes, like a local MCP server. I think that's the first step to build something and see how it works and how it, what you can do with it, and find that magic moment where for the first time, like a tool is called that you have defined and have like the LLM interact with data that you care about or with something that you care about. I think that's great. That's a good starting point. From there, I think really thinking through like learning about the specification and the like different primitives we talked about, so that you can build like a rich experience that is suitable for the data you're exposing and not just rely on tools. As you mentioned, I think there's some really great use cases for resources and prompts. I think that's really the next step, and try to like play around with the different things you can do and even like expose the same data in many different ways and see what you feel is the best experience for you. And then third, I think, is like once you have that, a local experience, if your data is suitable for it, maybe you want to go and take that next step and build a remote server. And that's a bit trickier. That requires a bit more work, but it's also, if you have worked on like deployed APIs and other things, it's not a big lift either. But it's not like, it might be like half a day worth of work compared to like 10 minutes to get started with a local server, but still very doable. And I think that's then logically the next step, and play around with all these like different primitives and like authorization and other things you can suddenly do when you know the user on the other side. I think there's some really interesting patterns. So I think there's different aspects of like where you are in your journey with building MCP servers, and that's where you pick them up. Like start small and then build it out. And I think that's what I would suggest people do.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people kind of have concerns with like, oh, you're just wrapping your API in MCP server. But I think from like just doing it, just starting and getting into MCP, it's okay as long as people then iterate like, oh, that actually should be a resource, or maybe I can reduce these tool calls, these like multiple REST APIs into one very purposeful tool call. So I think just keep iterating and learning. It's, I think, the biggest part. It's like nobody gets their tool descriptions right on the first time, right? It really takes your own kind of vibe evals, local testing, user feedback. Like that doesn't work, and then also understanding different models, right? It's always changing.
Yeah, right. Like everyone slaps on like a tool decorator in Python and suddenly has a tool and misses like that you can make descriptions for the tool, make descriptions for the arguments, all these things that are very good for the model to have, right? And so yes, you're absolutely right. There's so much to do to learn. But you just get started.
Yeah, I'm excited how clients can help. Like VS Code is now with dev mode or a great like MCP environment where you can like have it run automatically. So I think there's a lot more kind of help with tool descriptions and other things that we can also give from that side. Great, that was really awesome. Olivia,
you summoned me. Awesome. Thank you so much for that discussion, David. That was a really great way just to kind of set the stage of what MCP is, how it's not just tools, even though tools are incredibly powerful, and then also getting your perspective on what's next and what that vision looks like. So thank you so much for being here to share that perspective. And Harald, as always, thank you for being on the stream too.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Loved
it.
All right. Thanks, y'all. All right, with that is a great way to set the stage. We actually are going to start spotlighting a few different MCP servers. So first up, we have Peter coming on from the Figma team to showcase the dev mode MCP server. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Olivia. How's it going?
Good to see you again. This might be your first, is this your first time on the VS Code stream?
This is my first time on the VS Code stream. I'm very excited to be here. I love nerding out on code editors, and that is a fun part about my job. Even though I work at a design company, we are also a developer company. We do so much cool stuff in the code, and I'm really excited to share some of that today.
Oh my gosh, same. If y'all haven't tried out the dev mode MCP server, so it just went in beta, right? Like last week, like that. Yeah. Super cool. And I think that it's such, Figma obviously is just an amazing product in general, but it really helps illustrate what the MCP can do for your development. So I think sometimes it seems like very abstract for what it can do, but then since Figma obviously has such that visual component, it's really great. So yeah, I would love to just dive into what you'd like to talk about today and maybe see it in action.
For sure. Figure I'll start sharing my screen so we can take a look at this and walk through some stuff. And then, feel free to interrupt me with any questions, and let's get going. So go ahead and get set up. Make sure to test everything ahead of time so that we're good. All right. And so we should be seeing my lovely VS Code environment. And so as you all just heard, MCP servers, we know the basics of what they're going to do. But today we're going to talk about something different. We're going to talk about a concept that we call design-informed code gen. And what we mean by that is essentially when you are trying to create something from a visual, in the past, you could take like a screenshot, you could import that information, and AI agents would do a pretty good job. But for those of you who have been working with Figma designs in the past, you know that there's a lot more information that we can use there and start building. And so I have this web page. It's very fancy. I know. Everybody can be very impressed. I have a header and I have a footer, but we're missing a lot of stuff here, right? And so this is actually going to be our new pricing page. And
could you zoom in maybe just a few levels,
yeah,
Peter, just so we can like really get a full view of this?
Oh man, of my lovely header and my lovely footer.
Yeah.
I know it's a blank page right now. We'll add some spacing in here in just a second. I promise this is going to look better by the end of the demo. So we know that we want to start building this out. And in the past, there's a couple things that I could have done. My design team sent me over this wonderful file. They marked it ready for dev. And they said, all right, Peter, this is what we want our page to ultimately look like. And so what I previously could have done is I could have worked in dev mode, and we have all this great information about our layout, our CSS. We see our variables that are available. All of that information is readily available for us, but I was going to have to hop back and forth as I was building this all out to make sure that it was aligning properly. And I don't know about you all, but I've definitely had cycles before where I submit something and then I get back the overlay and it's a bunch of notes in there saying, can we change the padding here? Can we align this a little bit differently? There's always things that, like, if we could get that right the first time, it'd be really helpful if we could cut down on those iterations. And so rather than doing it that way, we're going to use the MCP server to actually build this out. So our MCP server is running locally. So that was the Figma desktop app that I had set up. So you download that, log in with your credentials. And then once you get it connected, we can have a series of code tools that you have available. So for instance, I'm going to use the get code tool. And I'm going to say, from the selection in Figma, can we create a new pricing page? Go ahead and run that. And what this is going to do is it's going to reach out. It's going to use that selection that I had for that pricing card. And we're going to go ahead and trust this. So skip that. Don't worry about running permissions. And while this is running in the background, this is going to get all that awesome information that we had in terms of our variables, in terms of our styling, our padding. But the other piece, which is really key, is it's not going to create this from scratch. It's actually going to use my existing components. And what you'll notice is it's actually reading through my directory and it's saying, hey, I see that there's a layout in this Figma design that has all these different components. Could I actually just use that instead? And if I switch over to my new pricing page, and we'll give it a nice little refresh here. Let's save. Oh, is my app not running? Suspense. Oh, come on.
It's always fun to find out.
I know. Live demos, always fun. Let's go ahead and rerun this. Make sure we're on localhost. Internet connection wants to not play nice with me today because I'm sharing too many screens.
Yeah, as soon as you get that factor, it's just a whole
Yeah, let's go ahead and re-import this because I think I know what's going on. Pricing section.
And if you could zoom in just maybe like one or two more ticks potentially.
Oh man, everybody's gonna have to see me. Everybody's gonna have to see exactly what I'm typing as I'm trying to do this.
We want to make sure.
Yes, I know. All right, we're gonna close out this tag. Live coding on the fly.
No, I know. And I mean, I feel like this is always like every time this happens, I'm like, this is why like Copilot's a Copilot, right? You're still in control, right? Sometimes you
sure. Let's walk through the actual app because I'm not sure why this doesn't want to load and play nicely for me. But we're gonna walk through exactly what this pricing section that it built out was. Now I'm gonna be honest. I ran this before, and this is why I was able to find everything previously. And I'm gonna show you just to prove this that we have our run get code. I ran this yesterday. And it grabbed all the same information, and this is the output that it created. And so the nice thing here is that what it has is all of our pricing information, but it also has all of our different components and primitives that we are getting all of our layouts and things that already exist in our code base. So in here, if you use Code Connect, for instance, we give you information about all the different component names. So I have this navigation pill. This is something that we already know we have in our design system. So if we already have that in our design system, let's just reuse it instead of trying to go through and trying to re-update everything. Same thing with these pricing cards. We already have a notion of these. And so rather than having Copilot create everything from scratch, it just went through and it replaced it with all the information that I need to work within my application. which again, like I said, I promise that it actually does work. I just don't know why it doesn't want to load up for me right now. But I have my pricing section here, and we're just going to go ahead and do a hide screen on this just to see if maybe it's getting hidden for some reason. Yeah, it's not responding at all. That is lovely. Thank you, Firefox.
Oh, the browser battles continue.
I know. This is what I get for trying to get this going on the fly live demo.
But I mean, like the power that you're explaining, like being able to pull all that just from the connection there and being able to see what already exists and not having to just come up with brand new things and integrate into your code base, like that is so powerful.
Yeah,
all having that, and just how long that would take before, right, to kind of figure out what to do.
For sure. And the piece that I wanted to show here is that when we reuse all these different references and when we read for all this information, we know that something like that also exists. If we look at the design here, you'll notice we have just a lot of generic information. Well, we actually have a pricing context that we're using. And so it detected that there was existing data that we could use, and it imported it into this component that we created. So knowing that we can pull information from our databases, importing things like state, so that we can say, all right, well, I know I'm going to have to switch between monthly and annual because that's what this navigation pill is for. This is giving us all this extra context, but it's all being compliant with the design system. And so what we're really trying to do is cut down on those different iterations and save us the headache of having to go through all of these different like iterations again and again for small little styling tweaks, but then also avoiding code bloat. And I think that's something that is really important is if you are running into a circumstance where you are creating new components every single time, that becomes really unwieldy to manage, even if it looks exactly like the design is supposed to look.
Yeah, and I was always like, front end was never my thing. And I think that was one of the issues of like, I would see a code base and there'd just be like 12,000 things. And you're just like, what does all this do? Is this really necessary to just be having all these new components every single time? So one, I think that that's so powerful. Two, what you mentioned of just like saving all those time. Like, I think that that's just really what in general, like AI assisted coding is amazing at, is like all those tedious things that you just have to like keep going over and over again in cycles. It takes that off your plate. And so you can focus more on the bigger pictures and the bigger problems there.
For sure. And one other thing I wanted to point out here is we are in beta, and this is great where we're getting all this code information, but that's not the only thing that we built into this. And there's a lot more tools that we're going to be working on. So real quick, just to give an overview of some of the tools that are available. I mentioned Code Connect. If you've played with Code Connect before, then you know what this is. If you aren't familiar with it, Code Connect is our ability to be able to map your existing properties in code to your Figma components, so that when you select something in a Figma design, you'll see that code actually get imported on the right, and you can get the source location within the GitHub repository. I know this is really small. It's really hard for me to bump up, so I can bump the design up, but the side panels kind of stay the same. But down here, there's a little button that if I click this out, it's going to actually link out to the GitHub repository where this pricing card component actually exists in code. And so we can get that mapping as part of the tools that we have available in the MCP server. So if you are just interested in finding that source information, we also have the ability to do a get image. So you can compare not only the underlying design context, but you can also have it take a screenshot of the image so that it can try to make it work the best. So sometimes things don't translate nice from design to code. This image visual allows you to be able to get that as well. And we can also get the variable definitions. So as I mentioned, this entire page has a bunch of selection colors and different variables that are all available, that if I wanted to, I could just select this entire frame, ask it to get the variable definitions, and give me all the information about any color variables or style variables that I have attached to these frames. So even beyond just like the generating code and creating new components, the whole idea here is that we're bringing a lot more information via the MCP server that the AI agent can use as you're starting to construct new things. And so let's say you're starting to build a brand new design system component. Having all that underlying information of your style guidelines and your brand guidelines is hugely impactful to being able to get things right the first time.
Right, you're not like switching between 12,000 screens, being like, okay, wait, hold on, that component there does this. Let me try to remember that by the time I get over to the code and find where that is, and then by the time you do all that, you forget what you were even doing in the first place. Like you can just have that straight in your flow. That's awesome.
Exactly. So real quick, and I'm going to give this a refresh one more time just to see if it wants to play nicely with me. It does look like it's loading. It does not.
Like,
I
no,
will figure out.
today's not the day.
Yeah, today apparently is not my day. What I did want to cover here real quick is people might be saying, hey, I could do this with like visuals before. And so just to kind of illustrate one of the things that we talk about is when you have just a visual, or if you just give an input or a command, AI agents, we all know this, they can act a little funky sometimes. We have these situations where we know that without an MCP server, you could say, make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And that monstrosity on the left is technically a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because there is peanut butter, there is jelly. It is in all kinds of crazy order, but it is technically a sandwich, unless you are a, is it a sandwich cube kind of cube rule kind of business.
Let's not get started there. It's a hot dog sandwich, folks.
But the idea is on the right, if we have an MCP server, we can indicate what kind of bread we want to have. We can indicate what kind of jelly we have. Personally, I'm a big fan of blackberry jam. You could indicate what kind of peanut butter you want to have. And the whole idea here is that when you're working with that underlying context, the output that you get, it's not that it's going to get it right the first time every single time, but it's going to reduce the iterations. Like, to give an example, from the output that I had on this code, when it created this, there was like 2 tweaks that I needed to make to this. Like, I just needed to update one property to say like, oh, okay, actually one of my variants wasn't configured correctly. And maybe I just had to do a little bit of a center align on something. But think about how much time that saves versus writing this code bespoke.
Yes. Yeah. Even just like being able to be like, okay, give you like some sort of thing to start with. Like, I feel like sometimes it's so hard just to get started and to know like what needs to be implemented and what components you need to be referencing. It takes that, like, it gets you from 0 to like 70 so much quicker than if you were just doing it manually.
Absolutely. And so the thing that we want to indicate is that what we are trying to solve for is the idea of you have these design system components. So you have things like Code Connect, you have Figma components, you have variables, you have styles. You're putting all that time and love into your Figma design files. Let's take it out of there via the MCP server and give that to your AI coding assistants. So now you see this nice linear flow where we're helping keep that consistency. And so what we are really trying to do, and what you're going to see us building a lot more capabilities on, is how do we improve that? How do we give you even more information? How do we even like give you more property information that you put into your Figma components? How do you get additional variable styles? All that information is going to get taken from those Figma files and directly output into your MCP servers.
That's exciting.
Absolutely. So I know we have a little bit of time left. I also wanted to make sure to see if there were any questions that we wanted to answer or go through.
I think that there's not any specific questions here. I think I did want to ask, I know you kind of mentioned a little bit like how do you get started even using this? Do you have any docs that we can point people to so they can get started?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we can do is, if you haven't taken a chance, read through our great blog. It gives you a lot of information about where we're going and what we wanted to do with this. You also have a couple of different resources that are available within this guide. We have our Help Center. Let me go ahead and open up the Help Center documentation for everyone. If you haven't seen this before, we have a great getting started guide for how you can get installed. We'll give you step-by-step instructions for how to get started with Copilot, as well as enabling the MCP server. So one of the things I do want to call out here is we do have a local connection for this MCP server with our Figma desktop application. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and download the Figma desktop application. And then you just need to enable the server. It's as easy now as going into dev mode and on the right-hand side, changing the status from disabled to enabled. It's right there. We put it made it very easy for you to be able to find the information that you wanted. So once you have that enabled, it will work for all of your files within the desktop application. From there, you set up the MCP server in VS Code, and then you can call each of those agent tools. One of the things we always say is that if you ever have any issues, just always turn it off, turn it back on again, and things will usually pick up the tools on the second time. But this documentation that we have will give you all the information about how to enable it. The other piece that I want to say is that you might be sitting there going, okay, this sounds great. I'm really curious about it, but I haven't actually gotten a chance to play around with the design system. So we have one for you. So this is the Figma Simple Design System. It was created by our DEA team. It is a React-based design system that has a series of components and things that we're working out. So all the information that I was working on for that previous application in my VS Code build is all pulled from this. And then to correspond with that, we have a community file. And that community file is going to allow you to be able to create those wonderful designs. And we have some examples like that pricing page that I showed that you can try and change some different pieces to be able to create the layouts of the screens that you want to have. And so using these in combination, you can actually get Code Connect set up. We've given instructions in the GitHub repository for how you can set up Code Connect, so you can see what that output looks like going into VS Code. And you can also, again, play around with some like predefined design system elements to be able to create some really beautiful stuff. So highly recommend playing around with all of these. We're going to be creating even more resources, more videos, so that folks know exactly how they can get started with all of these different tools.
Awesome. And I mean, in what, less than a week on the 18th, we're actually having someone from your team back onto the live stream, right? To come on.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely check that out on June 18th. We'll be having Akbar on the Figma team come on and basically show this, but in more detail. So definitely make sure to check that out to see it in action and ask even more questions about Figma and MCP.
Absolutely. And yeah, I apologize to everybody. The live demo gods do not want to.
No, we all get it. Look, Dario even said live demo with AI, scary. Like, you all thought that the demo gods were scary before. Now that we have AI, they're terrifying.
So the one thing I do want to point out here, because I do think it's really interesting, is so we pre-baked this component. I do want to show the chat that we just did today. One of the things that was really great about this is it actually read through the entire design system and it found that component. So because I asked it to do that, it actually said, I don't have to create anything because there's something that already exists. And so that's why I wanted to have both the histories of the chat. So we have the chat that showed the actual construction of it. But then what we also showed is that we can instruct the AI to look through our different sections and find the components that already exist so that you don't have to build it. Think about how great that would be also if you did like a Git pull and you had a new updated directory and you're going to start a project and all of a sudden it finds it for you and you're done. That is a great thing. So not duplicating work or efforts for anybody.
Awesome. There is actually one question to asking, is this MCP functionality available for free tier or paid users only?
Yep. So because we're using the dev mode information, you do need to have a dev or a full seat in order to access this because you are pulling that same information that you would normally get as a dev mode user. So if you'll notice, in order for me to enable this, I had to be in dev mode to be able to get it. All the underlying component information, the Code Connect information, all of that is required to have a dev seat. So you will need to have a full or a dev seat in order to access this.
Awesome. Cool. All right, Peter, anything else that you want to end us on before we say goodbye for now?
No, I am happy to join you all. This was awesome. I'm happy to come back and answer any other questions. Hope you all give it a try. Again, it's available to all of our users. Again, full or in dev seat. You should be able to go in and turn it on right now. If you have questions, we have a great feedback form that's both embedded into the product itself, as well as a feedback form that's available in our documentation. And we'd love to hear from you. Part of what we're doing over the next few months is we're trying to build as much as possible. So if there are use cases that you're interested in, if there are use cases that you want to learn more about, please come reach out to us. We want to hear that feedback.
Awesome. Sounds good. And then, yeah, come back June 18th on the VS Code channel to catch this in action again. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peter, for being here and demoing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Awesome. All right. And I see there's a lot of questions in general about MCP and diving deep. We will have Tyler and Connor on in just a little bit to talk a bit more about kind of the VS Code specific implementations. But for now, we're going to kind of keep going with some of these MCP server spotlights. And we're going to bring Debbie on to talk about Playwright.
Hello.
Hey, Debbie. How are you?
I was going to say I'm amazing, and now I'm like going, oh my God, now I'm super scared because if Peter couldn't get that demo to work, and I'm going to do a live demo, and oh no.
No, but I mean, what is it? Like the odds end up evening out. So if one doesn't go, then your odds are probably in your favor to go well the next time, right?
Exactly. Let's hope so.
Debbie, it's so exciting to have you here. If people are like ever on the VS Code channel or in the Playwright space at all, they're obviously very familiar with you. But if you want to just give like a quick intro to yourself and talk a bit about what you're going to be showing today.
Sure. So I'm Debbie O'Brien, and I work at Microsoft basically on Playwright and ensuring that Playwright is seen by the community, understood, and that there's all this like community around it and that it's easy to use. And then 2.5 months ago, we released the Playwright MCP server. So it's so new, like everything is so new in MCP world. And it's really exciting. And what I want to showcase today is just one little thing it can do, but it can do so many. And I have like videos on my channel of shopping with the Playwright MCP server. And like, there's so many things you could do, but I'm going to focus on testing today because that's what Playwright is really mainly about. So, yeah, you're going to have to help me out though, Olivia.
Yeah, let's do it. I love it.
Okay, so I've got basically a prompt file that I've already created. And I think when it comes to AI, prompts are so important. Tweaking it, getting it right, doing it again and again and again until it eventually works. So let's see if this prompt works. I've basically got a prompt that's telling the agent it's a test generator, and I want it to basically navigate to a website. I'm just going to tell it to explore a website, and I want it to imagine I gave you a website, Olivia, and said, I want you to test this website out for me, right? I'm basically asking the MCP server to test it out, to go to a website, navigate, browse. And then after it's finished doing something, then write the Playwright test, because now it has the information, the knowledge of what the website is about, rather than just inventing something. Sometimes Copilot can be really good at creating tests based on the code it has in its repo. But what if you don't have the code? What if I just give it to you, Olivia, and you don't have code base? So this is what I'm going to do. So the MCP server I've got here running just locally in a vscode folder. That's the Playwright MCP server. And I've got my prompt file here. So let's open up the chat, and literally all I'm going to do is just take this line of code here, which is explore. Let's leave that prompt file open. I always like to ensure that it's here. It's like, make sure you really have access to this in context. Otherwise, so explore this website. That's all I'm telling it to do. And I didn't even write it. Explore. Let me type it right.
I love that about Copilot too. They can it's spell checking too.
I'm in agent mode, and for this demo, I'm just using 3.7. And let's hit the button and see what it does. Right. So what it's meant to do is explore this website using the Playwright MCP server. And what the Playwright MCP server does is it gives Copilot or the LLMs access to a browser. So it's going to now open up a browser window. It's installing the browser, so we didn't have it, installed it. And now it's navigating to the website. And this is the website that the MCP server has just opened with the URL. I've given it into Copilot. And now it's taking a snapshot of the page to understand like all the elements on the page and what is there. And now I've told it to do one key functionality, because otherwise it goes a bit crazy and might create like 10 tests and we wouldn't have time for that. So just one, trying to control it sometimes. So it's decided it's going to use the search. And look, this is really interesting, right? Because this happened today when I was searching this. My demos always work, my tests always work, but I've always typed in Garfield or Deadpool or Avengers. MCP server just typed in Matrix, or Copilot just typed in Matrix, and the Matrix movie is not there. And there's a bug there. You saw that image didn't work, right? So that's something that as I'm like using the MCP server, I'm looking and seeing, I'm not doing anything. I'm getting a different perspective on someone using the search bar. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's something I need to fix. So I can now go off and tell it to fix that. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. Every time I see Playwright demoed here, I'm always amazed. I'm glad that you're talking with your hands, because it like lets people know you're not touching anything. Like this is all just happening.
I know.
Like literally just that one prompt, explore, and then the URL. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've done this demo a couple of times today just to practice, and it always chooses a different movie. And I'm like, oh no, what's going to happen if it chooses another movie that doesn't work? But it then always finds a movie that works, and that's really because it can take the page snapshot. So at least then we get a test that works, but we also see then something that doesn't work and can go and fix it. It's going to open the terminal now, and it's going to run the test because that was in my prompt. Now, will it get it right first time? Not always, right? But this one did. This passed. So that's really interesting. In my demos earlier, it didn't pass. I'm like, oh my God, I got it to pass. That's so insane. So basically, it tested the navigation, the search functionality, and it's put in an error handling. So that's really good. It's like trying to follow along there. It's like too much, right? But we can go back and check on what it did. But in general, I think this is really good. I'm just going to keep it. I always like to keep the button because, and let's get more space here. So I can go to this, like this looks, I don't know if you know, Olivia, much about Playwright, but this looks pretty good code. right? It's using best practices. It's using the get by role. It's using all the auto-weighting assertions. Now, I did put on that the prompt. I did tell it that that's what I wanted.
Okay.
So I'm like going, this test works, but can we be sure of it? Would you trust it, Olivia?
I think you verify.
Yeah, so let's go along in here, right? And I'm going to use show trace viewer. We could do show browser, but sometimes that's too quick. I want to do show trace viewer, and I'm just going to press play here. In VS Code extension, this is using the Playwright extension, and now I've got this trace viewer. I can make this a little bit bigger, and let me just take the full screen. So now I can like really go along and just kind of see what did it do. Like you can see there that it clicked this here. And then it typed in the search, what it typed in Avengers, right? So this is the test it wrote, and it checked all these things. It clicked on the Avengers, checked all the get by role, and then look, it typed in non-existent movie title XYZ. So it really wanted to be sure that that's this movie. And then it just kind of checked this. Now I can see that the not found image, it didn't really care about that. I do, so I'll go ahead and fix that in myself. And then I click the back button to go to the home button to go home. So that's the test it wrote. That's pretty good. And
that is a lot of steps, making sure you get that visual. Then that like I like that you're then also showing how you're using the Playwright extension as part of this, right? Like it's all just more tools that you can add to your development experience to see exactly, to your point, like what's important to you. Is it that broken image, like, and you have those tests and those outcomes to determine what you want to do next.
Yeah, and I mean, I could come along here and let's just do something funky and let's just make it fail, right? But imagine that it did, it failed itself, and it's going to open that trace viewer again because I had that checked. And what we can do in VS Code as well is really cool. That we can just, oh, did I close it? Yeah, there we go. I need more space, always on my screen. Let me close this here. So we can open this and we can start reading this error messages. And if you ever read like error messages and gone through this, I always find it like terrible. But you can click you can fix this with AI as well, right? Mm-hmm. And normally, now this is where the thing isn't going to show up. There you go. This little fix test failure. So we can just click on that and just go Copilot fix it, and like hands up, like fix it. And it's a little bit kind of trying to find a space so you can see it, but this test is failing because it's looking for a heading with popular at level 2, but the heading is actually a level 1 heading, so H2, H1s. And it's just going to head and fix that, and I'm just going to accept it and bang, and then I'll just close that error thing, and I'll just go and run it again, and my test will pass. There you go.
That's awesome. And that's actually, someone asked that, will the Playwright MCP server make a note of errors and potential bugs on the page and see if it can fix those? So it seems like you're able to say, okay, this is an error. And you literally said fix to Copilot.
Yeah, like I put it in the actual prompt. Let me just open that and go back over this. I said you're a test generator. You're given a scenario. You need to generate a Playwright test for, like, very clear. Do not generate test code based on the scenario. Do run the steps one by one using the tools provided by the Playwright MCP. So I'm being very specific just because I really want to make sure it does what I want it to do. Navigate to the specified URL, explore 1. I had 5 in here earlier and it took like half an hour and did so many things. I was like, no, just let's do 1. And when finished, close the browser just to close it, because we have like persistent context and might then carry it over to the next session. Implement a Playwright TypeScript test. I specifically want TypeScript based on message history, right? So based on the history from what it just did, using Playwright's best practices, role-based locators, auto-retrying assertions with no added timeouts unless necessary, as Playwright has built-in retries and auto-waiting if the correct locators and assertions are used. Because it was adding all these timeouts, and I'm like, why are you doing that? So being very specific.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great example of how you can personalize that, right? If you're seeing like, oh, this isn't the behavior I want, like just tell it that. and
exactly.
Then you get it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then save the test, execute the test file, and iterate until the test passes. So that's the important thing, which is if it has a failure, and this one worked, but the other one did have a failure, and it iterated and it fixed itself. And then, yeah, include the appropriate assertions and structure the test properly with titles. And if we go back, I mean, this is a great test.
Yeah, and I don't know if we explicitly said the name of that, but what Debbie's showing here is a prompt file. So they're super powerful to be able to kind of explicitly say that and reference that in your prompts. So definitely look up our documentation there to figure out.
Yeah, and the great thing about this is it's a reusable prompt, which means that prompt, like I'm just testing that website, but I could put this in another repo and test another website. Literally everybody could just copy this prompt and put it in their website and just say explore website.com and see what it does, see what test it gives you. And then you could put 5 key functionalities or 3 or 2. And then once it's done so many, you can just get it to keep like creating more. And then if it already has some test files, it's going to say, oh, well, I can see there's already a test for this already created. Let me go and create a test for something that isn't there. So there's so much power. It's really impressive what it can do.
It definitely is. Okay, Debbie, is there anything else you want to show? I feel like that was such a cool demo to really see just, from that single prompt, referencing the prompt file, exactly everything it could do on its own with the Playwright MCP server. Is there anything else you want to talk about or maybe show resources that people can go to?
Yeah, I was just going to say, go to the github.com Microsoft Playwright MCP. If you haven't started using it, literally just go down here and just go install server, and that will just install it for you in VS Code. So that's the easiest way to just quickly get started and then just kind of play around with a prompt and just see what it can do. But it is very, very cool. So definitely give it a try. You can put it locally in here as well, or you can put it in like global files, but it's really cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. There's a bunch of people saying this is awesome. They've been playing around with what you just showcased, and so that's been super useful. So thank you for being here. I know we'll definitely have you on the channel many more times.
Cool.
Definitely check out that Playwright MCP repo that Debbie linked to and get started on your own.
Great. Thanks very much.
All right. Thanks, Debbie. Have a great one.
Bye.
All right, then with that, we are going to go ahead into our next MCP server spotlight, and we're going to bring Sean on from the Netlify team to demo their MCP server. Hey, Sean.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep. How are you doing? I know you're at what, Render ATL right now, right?
Yes, I'm at Render ATL, and it's like I'm like behind the scenes a little bit here, trying to find a quiet room and trying to do this. I can't see you or anything going on because I'm on a single screen. So like, we're just gonna make this work.
No worries. You're actually kind of frozen to me. I don't know if you're frozen to anyone else, but that's okay because oh, you're back. There you are. Cool.
Okay. Also,
no, you're good. I'll let you know any questions that are having, so you can do that. And then, I mean, if anyone here has been at a conference and had to present or be on a meeting, they know the struggle can be. So
right.
We're making it work. I love it. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah. Excited to be here. So to dive in, Netlify, we do web hosting, web infrastructure. We try to make it easy to go from idea to production as fast as possible. And we've spent a lot of time trying to build great agent experience over the last several months. And, that's kind of this holistic experience around how agents interact with a digital service, and in this case, Netlify. And the most important thing right now to ensure we have is a great MCP, because like agents trying to interact with a service using MCP need to have a great experience doing so. So that's, we really started Netlify MCP officially last week. And that's kind of what I want to walk through today.
That's awesome. Yeah, let's do it. And it's exciting. It was just released last week. I know there's some docs we can point people to as well for that announcement.
Right, exactly. So the server is open source. We have some Netlify docs, and we can kind of walk through that. And obviously, like with all these things, we're like finding all the hiccups and like making it awesomer all the time. So more to come too, and not just this stuff. So to kind of dive into it, like I mentioned, we have the open source repo here, and it has lots of details.
Could you zoom just like 2 ticks maybe?
Yeah,
sorry.
probably not. All right, I'm do that all over the place. I'll try to remember. So like just to start this, if you haven't done anything, you can either go to Netlify MCP on GitHub here, or you can find it on our docs. But we have this fancy little install link. I'm using the Insiders Edition.
Insiders is where it's at. Highly recommend.
And it's going awesome. So like now you can just straight up get it installed. We can see it running here, and then like I already have this site stood up. So let's see, to start, let's just make sure the MCP is like doing its job. So like, what's my Netlify user email? Sure. And then like, if y'all want to email me, that's fine, because I'm going to share it. Cool. So we see it invoking the MCP, and I'm just to avoid this, I'm just going to always allow for now.
Nice. That's a good little feature spotlight there, that if you're ever tired of like getting those continue, you can literally just say always allow or allow in this workspace.
And
Disclaimer.
as you can see, I have one MCP server, so I'm like, I trust it. I made it. So cool. So it's hooked up here, and we do have a website here. I have it running in dev mode in the background. And if we look over here, this is the local version of this site. So trying to set up this example to be like, okay, we started with something, and I used Copilot to actually build this site. And I'm going to try to cherry pick and try to avoid the landmines where the agent's doing a lot of stuff, and just kind of try to focus on the MCP as much as we can to kind of show what it does. So we've already got a site here. But it's locally running. Obviously, we can get the agent to make updates to it and such.
Could you zoom, like one or two more levels on vscode? Yeah. Okay. If it's not too hard for you then to read.
It
still doable?
See.
Okay.
Let me see if I can tidy up a bit here. Awesome. So
you can pop chat into its own window too. I don't know if you knew that. That's like a recent thing you can do as well. And then pin it on top if you want.
What's the best way to do that?
Open chat in new window, and then you can pin it on top. So you just float it around, and then you have like a nice little
Look at this. That's way better. I was like, I don't know. Okay. So awesome. So we have the site. It's not on the web yet. So like, let's start by saying create a new site in my experiments team called and name the site code demo MCP. And let's see what this thing does. so okay, I got to do all the things. So the MCP itself exposes a handful of tools, and let's see what it did here. So it picked the wrong team. So let's say check my teams on my account and get the experiments team, try again. So in this case, Copilot, it's MCP and it's like non-deterministic agent. So it's like they're going to be non-deterministic and do things differently every other time. So cool. So in this case, we said, okay, actually pick the right team, and it did this time. So it added the new site called Cool Demo MCP. But we haven't deployed it yet. So it's just a site on my Netlify account. So let's have this thing deploy this code demo project to my new site. And we were talking about this the other day. Like, I give these demos, and I don't know why I don't just use the voice transcription.
Oh yeah.
And I end up
voice could speak this clutch,
and then saying what I'm typing while
I do the exact same thing, and every time I'm like, why am I so I'll be like, okay, now I'm gonna type this. Like, literally, I can just say it and it will type it.
Right. So cool. So it's doing the deploy, and deploys are this kind of async thing because it'll do a build in case there's like functions and stuff like that. So it's kicked off the build. So let's what's the status of that? And it's still building, and we will wait for it. So like I was getting at before, there's lots of tools that the MCP exposes, but we're trying to be very conscientious of how to do this in a way that we have the least amount of tools with the most reliability, because currently there's a lot of challenges with having too many tools with agents and things like that. So we have a handful of really powerful tools that can do a lot of different things. And when you're downloading this right now, you'll be able to do basically anything with a project. Change the access control for it, for example. So all right, so it says it's deployed, and let's see how honest it was. Boom, there. So now we have a public website. And this is actually the first, and I can only say this for now, like it was the first one, and currently the only MCP that really is able to go from to deploy full websites, not just like workers or like a specific thing it can build and kind of upload. But this is this is currently a Vite app, obviously, and it could very well have been a Astro site or a Next site. Things like that are more complicated, and it's able to do those things. But let's see if we can kind of do a little bit more here. So let's say so we have this site. I don't want, like I said, I don't want to confuse the agent too much with building out too many features. But let's play around with what we can do with the site itself. So I built this out, and maybe this is internal app. Can you change again, I'm just going to say what access words. I don't know how to spell this. It doesn't matter. Access controls for the
It's like
site.
when you're in school and like the teacher's looking over your shoulder and you suddenly like blank on like
I'm terrible at blank. I'm just like, oh god, fingers. You can change the access controls for the site to be team login only. Let's see if it can decipher that, because that's a really bad way to like say this. Okay, cool. So I've updated my site access control. So now that I go back to the site and I refresh the page, you can see that it's redirecting me to ensure that I'm logged in to Netlify using an SSO auth. So like if I'm one of our customers, like Riot Games and things like that, like they have they have huge teams and they back everything by SAML and SSO auth. They hook that up to Netlify, and they can say, you can have your internal apps and things like that say only the employees here at the company can access this, right? So if you were to get this, you couldn't access it right now, but we're doing demos. So like okay, never mind. Never mind. Undo that. Remove access controls. Cool. And so now, like, all right, we're doing demos, so we'll remove that. So there's lots of things like that. And let's add something that might be a little bit more dynamic, but like shouldn't be too complicated for the agents to build out pretty quick. So let's say create a serverless endpoint that says the current server time. I don't know. Okay, and so in addition to having the tools themselves, we also have coding rules and things like that, because Netlify has been around for 10 years. So these LLMs have been trained on all the good, bad, and ugly over time. And we have deprecated syntax and things like that. And so anyone building a good agent experience, including with MCP or context files, depending where the company or the project is in its lifespan, has to spend as much time teaching it how to do new things as much as it has to do teaching it how to not do old things, right? So it's learning. So so with this function here, so we have a new function, and let's go look at what it built. Server time. I can move this now. Cool. Perfect. So like this is using the latest syntax on Netlify, consulted the MCP to get the context for this. Soon these will also be, now that more agents such as Copilot support resources and things like that, we'll also translate these things into resources as well. But it will create edge functions, serverless functions, scheduled functions. We have Netlify database interactions that you can create a new database. Like for example, I just before this had the feature added where it will create a where it has notes that you can add. And I was just like, hey, add this, add a feature to have notes and store it in Netlify database. And it created this serverless function. And it started writing SQL to work with this. And it was like a one-shot, easy to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so the full platform is already really available. And we're just trying to make sure it's easier and easier to kind of do more. It's a really interesting balance on like how you teach models to do these things. And yeah, so that's really fun. And how do I get to, there we go. And maybe one more example is like if I want to store a secret, for example, my database password, right? So like it's pretty often with people adding API keys or things like that, they will inadvertently add it directly to the code. But with the Netlify MCP, you can easily say, let's say create a new environment variable called whatever MCP API key. That rhymes. With the value 123. And let it go. It will invoke our MCP and store it. So now we have the environment variables good to go. And at risk of inadvertently exposing secrets, I'm going to say, what environment
Right.
do I have on this site?
And just for like people who maybe missed the start of your demo, like I just want to emphasize the fact that this literally is just like that MCP configuration, and you're just started that MCP server and you have access to all this, which is crazy. Precisely. So before, I mean, it's hard to kind of see that like with this new world, it's but before, right, it was like, okay, let's build this thing, maybe create a GitHub repo, link some sites, understanding the CLI, start using that. And all that stuff is like, the status quo. And we've, made a real impression in the industry by having a great developer experience on that side. But now it's like, how much does that stuff even matter? Because like within those tools, within my editor, or agents that are MCP compatible, and even let's Copilot and these editor-based agents are amazing for certain types of users that know how to use them. But MCPs also work in other agents that are maybe more tailored to non-developers and things like that. They can still contribute to working with the sites that they own without having to do the developer tools only. Right? So making changes, tweaking settings. Another example here is, I don't have any forms, but on the Netlify platform, you can say, if you just like added a Netlify attribute to any web form on your website, any submission from that will get stored on Netlify, and you can see all the data, right? So we just kind of handle that for you. And very easily to say, so if it's like an email list, for example, you just create the form, add Netlify, and it'll aggregate all that information for you. But now you can, with the MCP, you can load data from those forms. You can ask questions about the data in those forms. You can change, update entries and manage those things without having to, go to the UI or do it. You can do a lot of really complex things that way. It really just like unlocks a whole new way of working. Which is so powerful and brings people closer to the tools that can help them get their site up and running. 100%.
And to your point earlier, we do have the docs. We have, on Netlify's docs, I'll just go docs.netlify. Here you can see the MCP server. It tells you all the things you can do with it, and ways to install it. In addition to the Netlify MCP open source project, it has all this stuff there. You'll see, the instructions, as well as these kind of one-click install links for VS Code.
Can folks leave issues in this repo? Is that the best way to get feedback on maybe features they want to see?
Yes, leave issues. You can, if you're interested in fixing stuff, PR is welcome. Obviously we have a pretty strong community. So reaching out to me or Netlify on Twitter or things like that, or X and Blue Sky and stuff will help engage there too. I mean, we get a lot of great feedback through those channels, and like I said, like this is all so nascent and new, and we've been really successful at creating great agent experiences for agents such as Copilot, as well as Bolt.new and Windsurf and various things, but there's still so many unknowns to kind of find and figure out how to make that great for developers deciding to use agents to work on their behalf.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, Sean, I feel like we saw so many cool features that this unlocks directly in the editor, which is really cool. Are there any other things you want to highlight or let people know before we bring you back to your conference?
I mean, people here trying these new MCPs, I think the really cool thing to explore here is not just any one MCP alone, but like we're reimagining what these entire workflows look like when you start combining them. Like the talk you just had around Playwright, the demo with that, and like, okay, so you can now deploy sites and then have Playwright tests go validate them, do smoke tests after deploys, things like that. Like you can really just start combining these things, and again, just like the sum is greater, or the sum is greater than the sum of its parts, or whatever. But
greater than its whole.
Yeah, exactly.
Than the whole. Yeah.
Really try to have compounding value around just bringing these things together. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Words. All right. So that's the cool thing. Like keep it not just experimenting with what Netlify can do and what you can do with these agents alone, but start combining these tools into interesting workflows, and especially now that they're so easy to kind of connect to. It's not a day of figuring this out or a week of figuring this stuff out. It is like seconds, right? Like we went from an idea to production in seconds with the Netlify MCP, and the demo before around creating tests with Playwright and evaluating tests and running them with Playwright, like that was seconds. Like this, I don't know how long that demo was, 15 minutes or so, but like so much happened.
Yeah, with like one, like just asking agent mode to do something.
And instead of that would have been a day of work probably for someone to do, and now you can do that much work in 15 minutes. Now you start combining these things, and you have a whole day's worth of work.
It's literally like hours and hours of your time, and like if you put like money on like the hours of your time too, like it's crazy how much like it's just saving you.
Yeah. And that's an interesting kind of dynamic where like this idea of like hard money and soft money, right? Like the money you don't really see, like paying salaries and stuff like that, and then hard money, people are like, oh well, this costs this much in subscriptions and tokens and stuff. And it's just like, but it's nowhere near the amount of cost it takes for my time. Like I'm able to do so much more per dollar, even though maybe it's a lot in tokens or whatever, but like it like is so much more saved because I'm able to burn down our backlog more and do really cool things and
focus your energy on those bigger tasks. Like
So I'm definitely looking forward to this future where like I know there's a lot of questions around like, oh, how's this going to affect jobs and stuff. I'm like, this is going to. I don't think we're going to need half the developers. I think developers are going to be able to do twice as much. That type of thing. They're going to be able to really do amazing things because I've never seen someone have an empty backlog. There's always more ideas than time to do them. And that's a really cool future now that we can kind of really go for that stuff that we couldn't get to before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a tool that's helping supercharge our workflows. It's not a tool that's replacing us. It's a tool that's just helping.
Yeah, like supercharge is exactly right. Like I feel like I have superpowers. Like trying to.
Yeah, right.
And like we my son is 8 years old, and we were able to sit down. He was like, I want to make a game. I was like, cool, let's do it. And we just did it. And like he has this really cool, there's venture.netlify.app. And he made this like little game, and you can like like do this stuff, and he had a blast doing it. And this alone, like if my son asked me, let's say this 5 years ago or 3 years ago, like, hey, can we make a game? Like, no, like, that's not me. I don't have that skill set. But we were able to do this stuff, and it's like even at an 8-year-old's level, he has superpowers now to be able to do these types of things. And as a professional, like we have even more superpowers. So like I'm super excited about these things, and whether or not there's a lot of, it's also a really cool time for us to help evolve and shape the kind of future for not just MCP, but general agentic kind of capabilities and teaching of LLMs and to do even better things.
Absolutely. I love that. I feel like that's a great note to end on. Like your 8-year-old son was empowered by the tools that AI assisted development can do. I think that it's just like really inspiring to see like how people who have no coding experience can go to this, or people who have coding experience, like you said, can just get to the cooler things that maybe they didn't have time to before.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sean, for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time, especially while you're traveling at a conference. It was great seeing the Netlify MCP server demo. Definitely check out those resources that we showed. Those will be in the video description, so you can check them out later if you missed them. But thank you again, Sean, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have a good one. Bye. All right. Well, that was an awesome demo for Sean. We are going to go ahead and pivot a bit and talk about MCP auth in general. And we're going to bring on Tyler from the VS Code team and Den from Microsoft to talk about that a bit.
Hello.
Tyler, what's up? Hey, Den.
Hello.
How are y'all?
It's a good day when there's a VS Code live stream.
Oh, I love it. That should be our slogan.
Totally.
Cool. Well, Tyler, I know that we just lost Tyler, but I'm sure he'll come back on.
We'll come back.
We still got Den, so it's a good day. Den, I was actually going to say, is this your first time on the VS Code live stream?
It is my first time on the VS Code live stream.
I can't believe that. That's crazy. Okay, so then do you want to do just a quick intro of yourself, and then we'll get Tyler back on too, and y'all can do your MCP auth thing.
Absolutely. So I'm Den Delimarsky. I'm a product manager at Microsoft, and here's Tyler. I work closely with Tyler. And for the past, 6 months, clearly a lot of time, I've been investing heavily into working with folks at MCP, folks at Anthropic that actually build MCP. My focus on security and authorization. We released a new specification that went live. It's in draft some time ago, but Tyler has been helping us put it in VS Code.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff moving in that space. Do we want to dive straight into the VS Code demo and then talk a little bit higher level, or Den, do you want to go a little bit more into the high level?
I can give you a higher level overview first, and then Tyler is the expert on VS Code demos for us. So auth and MCP, that's kind of a topic that a lot of folks are just kind of like, wait, what? Like, why do I need auth? And the thing is, like, we saw a lot of demos. Like we saw a demo from Sean just now talking about like the Netlify integration. When you connect a lot of MCP servers that empower your IDE or like VS Code to do a lot of things, oftentimes you're going to connect to different services or different MCP servers that require connecting to other downstream APIs
that require authentication, right? If you're connecting to, I don't know, Microsoft Graph or Dropbox or Salesforce or whatever else you might be using, you need somehow to authenticate yourself and say, I am Dan, I'm trying to get this data to my LLM so it can make some decision or build the code for me. And for a long time in the AI, in the AI age is what, like weeks? A spec has existed in the MCP world that basically said, if you're a developer of an MCP server, if you're somebody that actually is building those integrations, you have to write your authorization server by yourself. So you have to basically become an expert auth person that knows how do I go and mint new tokens? How do I go and refresh tokens? How do I control their lifetime? And all these kind of very complex things that frankly, not a lot of developers want to deal with, because unlike me, I know a lot of people are not that big into security in terms of like wanting to dive in. It's more like, hey man, I just want to get it up and running. I don't really care about a lot of these, like the inner workings of the security stack. So what we did is we worked with Anthropic and a community of security experts to basically rewrite the specification for MCP auth to basically say, well, what would happen if we would completely separate the kind of the concerns of the authorization server, kind of the service that's responsible for creating like authentication, like all the access tokens, refresh tokens, all this kind of complexity. And then you, the developer of the MCP server, can just go ahead and build your MCP server and say, you know what, I'm using Entra ID, or I'm using Okta or Auth0 or any of those identity providers. So we made it so much simpler, so much easier for developers to not worry about those things. So there we are. We have a new spec. It works really well. And as a very, very nice bonus, it actually works in VS Code like flawlessly. I've been playing with it. I love it. It's so good. And we have Tyler, who actually implemented this, and he can talk us through how that actually works in VS Code. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I heard exactly what you're saying, like taking, those pieces that developers maybe don't want to spend time being deep in the weeds on is a really powerful thing, and being able to just do that plugin.
Developers care about solving problems, right? Like if I'm a developer, I have a scenario in mind. I want to be able to like do something with my MCP server. How much time do I want to spend, building out security infrastructure? And then and also what is the risk? Like, can I vibe code myself into a security library? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't take that risk just yet, but yeah, there we are. But Tyler might talk to us more about this in VS Code.
For sure. Yeah. Sorry for the like disappearing.
No worries. It's kind of fun. It's like we're
yeah, my browser was crashing, so I had to do a quick switch. So hopefully we should be good now. Yeah, I'm sure the overview that Dan gave was like super awesome. Unfortunately, I missed most of it, but that's okay.
The news is you know it, so
yeah. So right, is it demo time? Should I get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet. All right. Well, so is my screen sharing? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Sweet. Okay. Cool. So yeah, MCP auth. I wanted to just show a couple of examples of where this might be useful. Well, first off, I know we've got is a second Sean that's going to be talking today on like the GitHub MCP stuff.
We've got Sam coming,
so, yeah. So I'm going to set that aside and save that for him. So I'm going to focus on some other MCP servers that are backed behind auth. So first off, I've got here the GitHub repo, which is super zoomed in, but this is the official like kind of registry of MCP servers under the Model Context Protocol org. So it's got like, official integrations. Like this list is so long. Not all of these are remote servers. In fact, most of them are probably local servers. But there's a ton here. And before this thing existed, I used this other repo that I wanted to call out by this person here called Jaw9C, who has this awesome remote MCP servers. Awesome repo that has a bunch of different remote MCP servers listed here. And the zoom makes this a little bit challenging. But the important part is if I scroll to the right, you see the authentication protocol that they support. So we obviously care, at least for the purpose of my demo, care about the OAuth 2.1 options here, which are what Den mentioned with the new spec and all of that. So, and then there's some other ones here that are open or require API keys, but we're going to focus on the OAuth 2.1 ones. So I figure we start with just a couple that I kind of hand-picked. I picked Linear was one of the ones I was playing around with. Linear is it's kind of like it's like GitHub Issues, but they do their own thing. So seems to be a pretty nice product. So I'll just go ahead and take you through the flow of adding an MCP server that has auth, which, shocker, is pretty much the same as adding any other MCP server. So you can open the command palette and do MCP add server here. There might be a way, or you can I think you can go from the tool menu here to get there as well. But I usually just go into the into the command palette, add an MCP server. And then we care about HTTP. These are remote MCP servers backed behind auth. So we'll pick HTTP. And I'll go ahead and paste that Linear one in here. Give it a name like Linear, perhaps. I'll put it in my user settings. And as soon as I add that, you'll notice my settings.json updated with the Linear URL in there. And then it asks for auth immediately. And this is maybe a familiar modal to you all, because it's the same kind of flow that you do when you sign into an extension. So I'll just allow, and it wants to make sure I trust this, and I'll go and do that. And then I'll just approve this, and then it'll redirect back to, there was a network error. I hope it still worked, but I think it did. I guess I should show you what it looks like. So this is what Linear looks like. And you see there's it's very reminiscent of GitHub Issues, right? It's like there are issues here, or to-dos, I guess is what they call them. Anyway, so I was taken to the flow, and now it's discovered that I have 21 tools available at my disposal. A couple of things that are cool with this. If I go to the account menu, where I usually see my accounts that I use with extensions, I now see MCP accounts here as well. So this one's for the Linear one. And we can provide more information so long as the authorization server that the MCP server uses is using newer constructs like JWTs and stuff like this. But this is a fairly basic auth server, so it just says MCP here. But anyway, so I could sign out of that, and I'll get rid of that if I want to, but I don't want to do that. I want to ask it a question. So it's discovered that there are 21 tools here. So now if I go into the tools in my chat, I can see MCP server Linear is here. And it just has all of these things, all of these tools that will act on my behalf in that that workspace, I guess. I don't know what.
And you just need to do that single auth approval that one time, and now everything's good. Awesome.
Right. Yeah. And the auth state is persisted. And if the auth has refresh tokens, you'll make sure to keep the tokens refreshed and all of that. So I can ask something like, I don't know, create an issue on Linear to write a talk for the live stream, which feels a little late, but it's fine.
Better late than never, Tyler.
Yeah. So I'm not manually invoking any tools or anything like that. I'm just using agent mode. I picked Claude Sonnet 4 because that's my
that's your
favorite model out of the bunch at the moment. And so it is invoking this tool on Linear. Let's see if it works. And the model is now just doing its thing. It's interacting with Linear directly, and we can, see, it's got my name.
Nice.
This is my team, I guess. And so now it's going to create the issue. Oh, and just to show you, it's kind of cool. You can like expand these, right? And yeah, here's the output of what those looks like.
Yeah,
So
I
this
love that you
is
showed that. I
grabbed.
feel like a lot of people don't know. They're like, oh, how did it get? It's like you can literally see the
Yeah, you
output
can
that I got from the
just
tool call.
see the output, right?
Yeah.
And this is the output of like one of the issues, because it's just running the list issues. And then continue, and let's see what happens. Perfect.
Nice. And it gives you a nice
All right.
summary of that.
Issue created. Oh wow, nice little link there too. That's cool. All right, let's open it up, see if it worked. Cool, there it is.
Nice.
That's a lot of tasks. I'm not doing all that.
Well,
Anyway, so yeah, that's one example. Let's see. We can go through a couple more examples that I found that were interesting.
We do have one question kind of on remote servers in general.
Sure.
Is there any way to configure proxies for remote MCPs?
Oh, the proxy. So it's all running. All of the communication between the MCP server and VS Code is running in the extension host, just as an extension would interact with some remote API. So proxy stuff should be more or less the same as an extension. So I don't think anything's really changed there from VS Code's interaction.
Cool, thanks.
I hope that answers the question. Yeah, I wanted to add the PayPal one here. This one's an interesting example to me because, so we'll just take it through the flow again. Yeah, I was testing this earlier. All right, and we're done with that. So now I'm just collecting these
Nice.
accounts here.
Yeah.
I wanted to call out this one because it's an example of like one. It's one that I used really a lot when I was verifying this work. And there was a question that I asked. Oh yeah, this? And the reason why I called this one out is because I think there's like maybe an issue with its spec in its tool definition for this list transactions thing. So what you see is it's like, okay, yeah, I get the last. I mean, the input looks good to me. I don't know anything really about the tool itself, but it looks right. But what I've noticed is that when I run this, it actually says invalid request.
Oh.
And it actually does, to its credit, give the right details here, where it says, oh, you need a start and end date in the query, right? And of course, the model's like, oh, I need to provide a date range, obviously. And so the second time round, it goes and does that. And then,
interesting. So that's kind of like it iterating, be like, oh, no, I actually need to do this. But the tool specification itself, you think is wrong with what it initially is asking for. Oh, interesting.
Yep. And so there you go. I spent $2.99, which is probably my Apple subscription.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's one. Anyway, I wanted to use that as an example as like how the model, even though if the spec doesn't quite conform, the model is pretty good at figuring out what to do, so long as it has the context of how to fix the problem.
Right. And kind of another example of like, you don't necessarily need to know what's going on behind the scenes. Like it's helpful that you were able to kind of be like, oh, I wonder what kind of happened here. But it takes it out a level. So like as a developer, you're just kind of like, I want to do this. Help me do that. Like you don't need to spend a bunch of time trying to troubleshoot that. You're just in your flow still.
The last one I had to show off because I just saw it get added to the bottom of this was Turkish Airlines. And I was like, I'm a huge travel person. I love to travel.
You just got back from a really fun trip, right?
Yeah, I was just in Egypt. Well, I was just in San Francisco, and then before that I was in Egypt, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So let me add Turkish Airlines to this, and let's just see what happens.
And yeah, as you're going through all this, like I know Den mentioned this at the start, and you mentioned it, Tyler, that your configuration file just looks like what it looks like before, because the authentication flow just happens through the client. You don't have to have like extra tokens or anything in that configuration. It's just an easy like plug, and then it does what
it's auth. It's just auth, right? Like you don't need to manage any API tokens. You need to worry about them accidentally, like somebody seeing it on the live stream. It's just
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I added Turkish, and it has a bunch of tools, which I think is really fun. There's a get city guide. So what do you think? Should we try it?
Yeah, let's do it.
What city should we try? I mean, it's Turkish Airlines. I mean, they're an international airline.
Yeah.
But maybe we stick to Istanbul, since that's probably a safe bet. Oh, here's an interesting situation that happened here. So my original linear connection, it probably terminated because it was not doing anything. And so it looks kind of scary, but it really is just like killing the connection because it's been sitting there connected for a while.
Yeah, but then giving you that like UI to let you know, hey, this did.
Yeah. Anyway, get me the city guide for Istanbul. That's right. Yeah. Let's see. I don't entirely know why I need to be authenticated to Turkish Airlines in order to get a city guide, but you know,
yeah, some of the other
that's what they want, so fair enough.
Gatekeeper.
I'm sure there was a tool for seeing like how many points I have.
Yeah, I think there's like something for like booking status. I think I saw.
Yeah.
Tools, so.
I think I have a little bit of points, but anyway, look at that. You can know everything you want about Istanbul, right?
You can plan your whole trip in VS Code now too. Like,
yeah, exactly. Do
everything in VS Code. Never have to leave.
Anyway, yeah, those are just a few options. Like, definitely take a look at both the list of official registries and also this other resource. I want to shout out to the folks at Atlassian. They were like super responsive in lighting this up. And so they have a nice MCP server for doing Atlassian things with like Bitbucket and whatnot. But I chatted with them a little bit to get that thing ironed out. Also, some of these, which is kind of neat. I know that was Sean from Netlify on. But yeah, some of these are like built on top of that, and there's some that are like you see built on top of like Cloudflare as well. It seems like there's quite a lot of really nice build on top of X provider, your MCP server, and a lot of them have just like a switch for like auth and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's it. Are there any questions?
I don't know that there are any specific. We answered the one on proxy. Someone did say, Tyler, any chance of some PowerShell demos? As per usual, every time you're on this stream.
That's so funny. Yeah.
There was, this is kind of an MCP question, more high level, but they're like, if MCP uses tools, resources, and prompts, is the tool itself an agent? I don't know if you want to speak to the.
Wait, sorry. Say that one more time.
If MCP uses tools, resources, and prompts, can the tool itself be an agent? So I think it's kind of what is the relationship between tools and agent and MCP? If you want to open that.
Semantically, yeah. I mean, I think semantically, I don't see why I wouldn't be leaning into the agent category. I think what really starts to blur the lines, which Connor will talk about.
Yeah, Connor literally just said I can come on and speak next on that.
Yeah. Is sampling, which is the idea of an MCP server invoking the LLM that's invoking it. And then when you like think about that, right? So now the MCP server not only has access to tools, prompts, resources, and the ability to make LLM calls. And at that point, yeah, it feels pretty agent to me, if in my opinion. But I don't want to steal Connor's spotlight.
Well, that's a great segue then. So
yeah, exactly. I'll just leave
Tyler,
you with
thank
that.
you so much, for coming on and talking about auth. We really appreciate it. Den giving us that high level and Tyler showing us off specifically in VS Code. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Well, with that, I mean, we literally didn't even plan that segue. We'll go ahead and bring on Connor, also from the VS Code engineering team, who's going to talk a little bit more about MCP in general, the latest features. So, hey, Connor, how's it going?
Hey, yeah, going well. Thanks for having me on.
Oh my gosh, of course. We love having you here. I know if folks weren't here at the start, you might have missed the fact that the VS Code release, the stable release, is going live in probably like 15 minutes or something like that, like pretty soon. But everything that Connor's going to show with the latest features and talking about MCP and VS Code in general is in Insiders already. So kind of a plug there for that.
Yep,
So
always goes Insiders.
yeah,
Your
I'll
latest
turn it over
ones,
to you, Connor. Let us know what you're going to talk about. If you want to start with talking about some of that question we were just chatting about and go from there.
Yeah. So our last stable release of VS Code was the first release with MCP. So then we had support for like MCP prompts, or sorry, MCP tools in that release. And so since then, in this month, which is coming out at a stable in moments, we now support basically everything else of MCP. So we now added support for resources, prompts, as well as sampling. And so I'm planning to just go through and show some of that. So here I have a repo that it's a pretty old repo. It's a library I made for doing like retries and backoffs and so on. And all the tests I have are all tests written in Mocha, which is fine. Like Mocha's fine. But nowadays I like to use vtest for things just because it's a bit better UI. There's better utilities, and there's more things that I can do with that. So for this, so I can convert this project, but I also have other projects that I want to convert. So for this, I'm actually going to have the LM first basically create a prompt that I can use later on to, or like reuse basically to convert files from Mocha to vtest. And then I'm going to actually have it saved with JustPad. So let's go ahead and kick that off. So looks like it's giving me a prompt that is pretty accurate, like replacing chai with just the built-in vtest goodness. And yeah, I think that should actually work pretty well. So now I've already installed the JustPad extension. So JustPad is a super cool extension that does integrations with gists, which are basically it's basically a paste bin on GitHub. And so this has a lot of cool features, but what they just added is also support for MCP. So so I already went and signed in to JustPad, so you can see my various random snippets here that I've collected over the years. But there is a tool that it provides, and because I installed this extension, it's using our new APIs that allow extensions to also contribute MCP servers. It's already installed an extension, or installed that, and so it looks like there's a bunch of tools here. So there's things that can like add comments, get files, archive gists, just delete them, and so on and so forth. But what it can do is also save a prompt into a gist file, which is useful because then you can use it in like other computers or wherever else you have your gists. And so what I'm going to do is then ask it to say that's cool. Save that into my gist prompts. And what that should do is then call the MCP server to add that prompt into JustPad. And so then I can use that. So we should actually see a new gist it's here called prompts. And so now I can use that prompt. So I actually have prompts from MCP servers come in through the /command format. I think they actually have not. 1 second. I put in a PR to them, but I think maybe they didn't merge my fix to have them actually publish when a new prompt comes in. So I'm just going to reload the window real quick and start the JustPad server so that we get the new prompts. And then there we go. There's this new prompt that is what we had before that converts the Mocha test into vtest. So we're going to do that. And then basically it just like fills in that prompt into my input box here. It looks like the model didn't really know that we have attachments in VS Code. So I'm just going to delete that bit and then just attach my test file here. And then let it do its thing, and then it should work pretty well. So, yeah, looks like that happened. Yeah, it seems like that should, that should work. I think I haven't installed vtest, so it's going to have errors there though, but that looks like it should be about correct for what I want to do. So that's cool. So that's prompts, and so another thing that I haven't shown yet is that we can have prompt inputs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to say, let's see, is that actually going to work? Let's see. that takes my git diff as input and writes a haiku about it, save it to just pad. So MCP prompts can also have inputs. So if it does it correctly, let's see if that works or not. I'm actually not sure. I do have another demo that I don't know if just pad supports.
I love it. Let's see if it works.
I'm not sure if they support inputs or not, but if not, I have another demo that I can use for that. Oh, it does. Okay, cool.
Nice.
So
okay, so you just did that / command to get the prompt, and then that brought up this input box.
yes,
Okay.
because there was an input there. So I think maybe the GitHub MCP server is going to show like more things you can do with this, but initially, like you get a text box if there are completions from the server. So GitHub, I think, is going to support completions soon. Then you get completions here. But otherwise, you can either just put in text, or you can do like a command. So I could do like get diff. I think my diff might actually be empty right now, but we can try running that as a command. We see that it runs the command. I just had a little change that just changed some settings. And then we can see that it put that into my input box, and then I can run it. And then we should get a nice haiku about how my settings are so beautiful. Yep, they are. Look at that.
That's awesome. That's really cool how it just has that input functionality, and you can just plug that in really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the next thing that I wanted to show is resources. So resources can actually come through a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different things. I think that you have someone on later to talk about Playwright. So Playwright uses resources as well. But something that I can do through just pad is attach resources as context. So if MCP servers publish resources, then there's a way to attach that through the through the add context menu. So we can go and then we get to browse our list of resources. So here I've actually saved a bunch of logs from this one issue that I have on the repo into that gist. So I can attach that there. We can pull it up. We can see the contents of the gist. It's just JSON right now, but that should be enough for the model to figure out what's going on. And so then I could say, attached an issue I got, please start working on that. And then it should like be the issue, and then it's I haven't validated if this issue is actually like that valid or not, but it should start working on that, and then we can see how that works. I can also we support the resource templates that MCP has as well. So I could add context, and if I choose like comments for gist, I can put in a gist ID there, and then get the comments for that gist as well. So those are a couple of primitives, and the last one that I wanted to show is sampling. So for that, I'm actually going to solve over to a different workspace, and this is a cool kind of MCP server that I modified. That is essentially a like old like text style dungeon crawler sort of thing. So we start our adventure. So there's a welcome message. So that basically like starts off the adventure. It says like you find yourself in a room. Oh, and then it's actually automatically starting to look around. We see in the background there that it has you have the intro, and then it's starting to look around at surroundings. And I modified this server to use sampling. And so sampling is basically just a fancy way to say that the MCP server is allowed to request that the client makes LM calls on its behalf. So it's a way that they can hook back into like your GPT, Claude, whatever model, and then like drive more kind of data or actions from there. And so what I've done with this server is that I modified it so that when you look around in the dungeon, then it prompts the model to create some fancy like description of the dungeon and like create and put some creative things there. So I'm going to allow this.
Okay.
So allow the MUD server to always do sampling, because like you don't want to have servers that just like take up your rate limits like in the background and so on. And then we see that it's added to my settings. So it's added to settings in the repo because I defined the server in this repo. And then we can say that we save the setting that it's allowed to make sampling calls during chat. It is also possible for an MCP server to make like sampling calls just otherwise. So we have a separate dialog if it wants to make calls outside of just a tool call that's being made from chat. So we can say that it ran the look. So it looks like it made a crumbling stone archway, some moss-covered walls, and some ancient ruins, which sounds like a fun adventure.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can see the description there. And then we can also, if you're interested in looking at the logs, this is kind of very preliminary right now. But if you go to the server and the list servers command, I'll get my mud server, and then you can show the sampling requests that it made. And the server made 9 requests in the last week, just when I was testing it. And we can see the request and response that were made here. This is just a way just so you can like monitor this. I think in the next few iterations we'll have a better like richer UI for this.
But this is helpful right now to kind of see like what's going on behind the scenes and like fully understand exactly what sampling means then.
Yep, exactly. Yep, and then finally, you can also control the models that they can access. So if you have maybe like a basic MCP server that you just want to have like some basic smartness, you could maybe give it like O3 or like a model that's very cheap, but you might want to give other MCP servers like access to Sonnet if they have more advanced features. And so you can also do that with the configure model access command under the server action. And so here we can see that defaulted to a GPT-4.1, but I could say that also I want it to maybe use Gemini or like use like Gemini 2.5 Pro to like create cooler dungeons or something along those lines. So yeah, so that's an option for that.
Is that list of models the same as like what you would see in the model picker? Like, is it just pulling from that list?
Yep, exactly. Yes, I have like these models configured, and also have a couple of models that I have.
So if you have like bring your own key too, it will pull from those. Okay.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so that's that so far. So prompts are going to get some polished restoration. Sampling is going to be a lot richer soon, but these things are there. So if you are an MCP developer, you can start using them. Oh, one last thing I didn't show. If you are an MCP developer, we have some cool new features for that as well. So you might have found that maybe like debugging or developing on your server is kind of challenging sometimes, just because you have to like start the server, you have to like maybe have console logs and so on and so forth. So this iteration, we actually added a dev mode to MCP. So there's a few things. So normally this is your MCP command. You have like your command, your args, and whatever. But if you do the dev mode, there's a few more options. One of them are these watch patterns. And so you can say that these are glob patterns in your workspace that when we see them changed, then we'll restart your server automatically. So if you are iterating on, if you're iterating on your server, you want to make sure that it's always up to date with the current tools and prompts and resources and so on. Then you can use the watch mode. I think this compiles into my dist folder, so I'm just going to have it change or update whenever any of my dist files change, like that. And we also support debugging servers written in Node.js and Python. So the default example thing was Node, so this should just work. So now if I set a breakpoint, so I'm not super familiar with the server, I just hacked in some random stuff. I'll just put a breakpoint in hello request right there, and then I can debug that server. And then we see that we hit my breakpoint. This is the request, it's probably the initialized request, and we can see the parameters and so on. We can debug our server really easily using vscode. Let's see, this tools, this prompts, there we go. And then if I send another request, let's say go north, it's probably going to call it, yep, it's calling move, and then we can debug that through here. And so it should make development of servers a lot easier as well.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
so yes, I think that's kind of the like whirlwind of everything I wanted to show so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. And I feel like this is really cool because if people were here at the start of the stream, we had David and Harald come on talking about like what is the MCP spec, and then Connor here to show like exactly what that looks like in VS Code and all those different pieces. We do have a couple of questions on MCP in general. Thanks for the showcase. Where can I find information about how MCP works with VS Code under the hood? So like, is there like a blog post or docs in general we can point them to?
Yes, we have a blog post. I'm not sure it goes super deep under the hood, But I can find the link for that real quick, and then we can probably post that in chat. But we did do a blog post.
And maybe we can have you on, Connor, for another standalone live stream to do like that deep dive too, and like really peel back everything that's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah. I shared a link, so someone who's in chat can post it in chat.
We'll show that on the screen in just a second then. And then this is again kind of MCP in general. If you're working with, I guess, kind of agent mode in general more. But how does agent mode and MCP work with context across projects? Is there any way to link those?
Yeah. So there's nothing like super explicit for this, but like MCP servers, you can define like this. For my example, I just have the server installed in the workspace. But you could also have like a server installed at a like user level, and there's actually a bunch of like servers around like memory MCP servers that like save memories to the server and then allow models to retrieve them later. And so that'd be probably a really good way that you can install a server like that globally in your user settings. Then you can use that to store the memories and then access them across workspaces. You could also use JustPad, like just prompts that I showed were prompts that were available anywhere that JustPad's running. But that's not really explicitly what that server is trying to do. Okay,
cool. Good tips there. Awesome. Well, I know you already showed a lot, but is there anything else you want to show or talk about, looking forward for VS Code's work in this space?
Yeah, well, there is a new MCP spec version coming out probably in the next week or two. So there's some new features there, like there's ways for MCP servers to like ask for input from the user. So we'll probably support that. I'm not sure if that'll be if that will be like be polished this iteration, but there's a bunch of like new features coming down there. And then also, as I mentioned, if you're an extension author who wants to use MCP servers, our API for actually publishing MCP servers from extensions hasn't finalized this iteration. So you can also use that, which is what JustPad does to publish their MCP server just through their extension.
Okay, awesome, cool. That's very good to know. So I guess Insiders is kind of where people should be to help get access to these as soon as they land.
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. All right, Connor. Well, if that's it, that was really awesome to see. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and it sounds like people want you back to talk a little bit even more under the hood. But it's really great to see all the work that the team has done here and being, now fully supporting the MCP spec is really awesome and a really great landmark and shows just how quickly the team works too, right? Like 6 months ago, we weren't talking about MCP and now we have the full, MCP wasn't really even a thing. And now we have this. So it's really cool to see just the work that the team is doing. So thank you for all that.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right, Connor, well then have a great rest of your day and we'll see you on the stream again. I know we will.
Sounds good. Have a good one. Bye.
All right, so with that, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We've been talking about MCP a lot this entire time. The theme is extending agent mode, and MCP is a great way to do that. But there is another way that you can extend agent mode in VS Code as well, and that is with extensions. Extensions are kind of our the heart of VS Code, and you can use them in agent mode as well with tools contributed by extensions. So with that, we're going to bring on Rob to talk a little bit about one of the cool newest extensions that just hit and how we can use it in agent mode. Hey, Rob.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's good. How are you doing? You're entering hour 3.
I know.
So,
it's a marathon. No, this is great. There's so much fun stuff. And I feel like the fact that there's like different people every time, it's like every time I get like excited about something new. So yeah, thanks chat for hanging in with me too. Rob, I think this is your first time on the stream, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So very exciting. We've had a few first timers on this stream today. Would you want to just open with a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we can dive into what you want to talk about today?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an engineer on at Microsoft on the Azure Postgres team, and I'm on the team that's just built the VS Code extension for PostgreSQL. And specifically, I was authoring the Copilot integration, both the chat participant and then the agent mode as well.
Awesome. Cool. So, I mean, that's a great segue into what that looks like. I know the PostgreSQL extension has been very well received. So I'm sure there's a lot of people excited to both see that in action and kind of maybe hear a little bit more about like the development process to get there and get that integration.
Totally, yeah. So I'll just kind of introduce the extension through a bit of a demo, but just to show what it looks like. There's a lot. If you search for Postgres, there's a lot of extensions. So our logo looks like that. That's the new extension that we released. There was an old extension from Microsoft that's now been deprecated. This is all sort of like brand new work. And sort of like to dive right into kind of set the context of the general extension before we get into the agent mode bits. There's sort of an explorer. You can add connections to your servers. There's a few different ways to do that through connection strings, browsing Azure if you're using Azure Flex. And so I have an Azure Flex Dev server that I've already connected to. And then so here we have this like object browser that should seem pretty familiar to folks that are using, object database IDEs. So I can go in here and look at the tables I have, do things like, select top 100. We have an integrated, we have an integrated editor so that you can run SQL commands connected to the database and see results viewer. Another kind of cool aspect of this is to be able to visualize the schema with an integrated, with an integrated viewer. So if you want to get a good idea of what your database contains, you can go ahead and there's a little bit of interaction here as well. You can also do this integration where you can say chat with this database and say, what does this database contain? Right. And right now we're in ask mode. And so our initial GitHub integration really focused on the chat participant, which is still really great for like talking to a single database. And we have sort of system prompts and sort of specific techniques to, make it really good at answering questions about a specific database. And you could do things like this, where we have this, query that, is a little bulky. We're not sure exactly what it does. We can go ahead and connect to that database. I'm going to connect to the server. I'm going to switch to the Postgres Air and then say there's a whole command palette here with PostgreSQL Copilot. And I can say things like rewrite the query. It'll go ahead and look at it, analyze the performance, and with the full context of the database, rewrite the query to be more performant, more readable, things like that. And really, that's just a kind of a pre-canned prompt. And so we'll give it a little bit of time to go ahead and finish its work here. And you can see how it's really interesting, because even in the ask mode, there's multiple tool calls happening. It's almost acting like an agent, but it is really scoped to this like one database. And at the end of the process, I'm going to get a snippet that I can paste into my editor. But with agent mode, we don't have to do that, right? It can edit the code base directly.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good, we get that question all the time. Like, what is ask? What is edit? What is agent? Like, how do I know the difference? And so I feel like this is good. We're seeing that literally visualized here, where this is like literally just chatting. Like, there's no, Copilot's not doing anything other than giving you a response. So you do have to go in and copy and paste. Like, it's still helpful, and it's still, some people might actually prefer that who maybe don't want the autonomous acting. But that's when you would use ask, is when you don't want to have like the automatic editing and things like that.
Totally. Yeah. Sometimes I'll switch over to ask just to be like, hey, I'm just asking a question. I don't want you to actually make any changes.
Chill,
just chill. Yeah. Chill for a second. Let me get my bearings. You've done a lot of work.
Right.
Yeah. And so one thing that you can see is that the all of the queries that the Copilot does are actually saved off in this query history. So you can really review exactly what it's doing. But just we were talking about, okay, I can go like copy this code. I can, insert it here, but who wants to do that, right? So we were building this extension, we were building Copilot integration, and then agent mode went GA sort of a month before we were planning on releasing. So we're like, okay, how can we quickly, how can we quickly do this? So with agent mode, and I'll just go ahead and get a new chat, switch to agent. And so we have a set of tools that we built. You can see in PostgreSQL that can list servers, connect, do all sorts of things, load in CSVs. It's really quite powerful. So I'm going to close out the zoomed out editors. Don't save that. Cool. So let me just say, connect to my Azure Flex Dev Server, the Adventure Works database. And I just always misspell in demos, but like you had said earlier, it's like spell check. I don't have to try too hard.
Yeah, you don't need to.
So here it's using all that context from like my servers and everything that I already set up to be able to just say, okay, now I have a connection to this database. I can start working with this. And it's fetching all the schemas. So I can say this, connect, directly type that. We also have just like this little convenience context menu, say connect database in agent mode, which is just a pre-canned prompt to say, hey, connect this and await further instructions. And Claude Sonnet 4 is pretty chatty, so it's doing a lot more than I.
Well, and I feel like that's what a lot of people also ask, like, what model do I want to do? And it's like, yeah, certain models are gonna be like more prone to tool calling. Certain models be more prone to like, this is exactly what I just did. And you can so that might be one way you choose a model, but you can also tell the model that get to the point.
So I can like directly like visualize the schema from here. So if there's has a tool to like actually, open up editors, open up scripts, which is really nice because you can tell it to like edit schemas and then open up the visualization so you can immediately see it updated as it builds it out. And you can see this Adventure Works is like a pretty intense schema. But first I wanted to talk about how we implemented this. And I do feel a little bit left out with all the MCP talk. Because
no, I specifically, wanted you. This is great.
Yeah, we went a little different route, but we considered it. So when it's like, oh, agent mode's released, we want to integrate this into our extension. So what should we do? Should we build an MCP server? And so I found that as we were approaching that, we already had this extension. We wanted the context of all the configuration that we store, like for instance, in the VS Code, like credential storage, right? We want to be able to like use the TypeScript to like fetch that out. We also have a language server that we communicate with and connect to the database. And there's already a lot of functionality that we have both in like the TypeScript side and the language server side. So integrating directly with the VS Code language model tool API was really great because I feel like it allows for a deeper integration with VS Code. We can run commands in the extension. We can open up windows. We can, really do a lot of rich things in the UI. And we plan on building out MCP server functionality in the future. But I think, if you're considering like a really good developer experience inside of VS Code, like definitely take a look at the language model tool API. It's really been great for us.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear kind of the perspective and like how that worked for y'all's team and the benefits that you get there. Like you said, like having that like in editor, like very rich experience. And so that's kind of what led you to go the language model tools API route versus MCP. And like you said, like MCP still has a place, it sounds like, in your roadmap. But there's things for each. And if you're already an extension author for VS Code, highly recommend checking out the language model tools API docs. We'll link them so you can see how you can get started there as well.
Totally. Yeah. And so, demoing agent mode is really interesting. I think Debbie did it really well as far as like, live coding. Sometimes it takes a long time. So what I sort of did is I already had a chat where I built and I did this last night, promise, where I built a application, and I'll scroll up to the chat. Let's see if we can get a little bit more view here. I started talking with the sort of chat participants. So let me scroll past that, connected to the Adventure Works database, and then said build me a fast API server with read-only APIs to serve the AdventureWorks database as REST endpoints and a front end to visualize the data. So it had done that. And so with the context of the database, right, the first thing it does is fetches all the schema. It's able to, build out a fast API server that has a lot of sample data that it derives from that matches the sort of table structure. I was able to ask it to use Azure authentication to get my Entra token using default Azure credentials. And it built this out. So I think the servers are still running. Let's see. So simple web browser. Nope. No, thank you. GHP localhost 3000.
Simple browser show is also like a lot of people don't know this exists in VS Code. They can just bring up a browser, and it's super helpful.
Yeah, I didn't know until I watched the a live stream on this channel.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah, it's like perfect for that.
Yeah. So there's like all this data about this very complicated. I mean, we saw the schema visualization, we saw like the zoomed out version, and it's just like actually, I didn't do much of this. It just figured out, how to present this data in a pretty interesting UI.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought what we could do is go ahead and try to add a feature to this UI. So I'm going to add it to the API server first, and then if we have time, go to the UI. One thing I will say is that this API main is getting a little long in the tooth. There's all this JavaScript code embedded in an index. So I love agent mode for these like initial demo creations, but real development is like stopping and saying, hey, break this up. Let's make this more composable, because even the agents have trouble working on a code file this big. And so I find that like, in real development processes, like you have to sort of know what you want it to look like and guide the model to build the thing that you're trying to look like. So you can't have it do everything for you.
Right.
And yeah, I'll get off my soapbox here.
No, and I mean, to your point, like, agent mode doesn't care if like it's easily broken apart, so if someone can easily like onboard onto it, like it's just gonna be like, oh, you want this code? Yeah, here we go. And so it's up to us as developers to make sure we're, to your point, like know what we want it to look like, and that we're shaping it into that.
Totally. Yeah. And that's like the work. It's a tool that we're, I find myself like learning how to use effectively, because it'll do that work. It'll refactor things. It'll make it, look like really good code, but you have to know that you want that and to ask it. Cool. So I'm just going to ask it to add an API endpoint that gets the top customers by product category. And then I'm going to say specifically like develop the query first, then build the API endpoint. And you know what, just to make sure that it knows that I want to use the database, I'm going to say connect to this database in agent mode. Because sometimes it'll just take a little bit to get there. And it's,
so it's like, let's take out that step. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing, right? Like explicitly like putting that context that you want is always a great just kind of practice to do. I think a lot of times people will be like, it's not giving me what I want, like I'm frustrated, and like I understand that, but at the same time it's a tool, just like you were saying.
Yes.
And so you kind of need to learn how to wield that tool best, and one of the ways to do that is just like you were saying, right? You're like, oh, let's just go ahead and make sure we're connecting, that we've already set that, so we don't have to go through that like annoying, wait, this isn't the database I wanted, like you skip that, and you learn kind of those tips.
Totally. Yeah. And it's such a tool that has this space of possibilities that it's really hard to kind of like learn, what you should do. But at the same time, it sort of puts an emphasis on creativity in a way that I really love. Like you can use these models in such creative ways. You can ask it to do design docs and then generate diagrams and then build things off of the diagrams. But you have to kind of like be inventive and be creative and say, okay, how do I ask it to do this new thing and try out things and iterate. So yeah, it's a tool. It's a very powerful tool, but I'm still like really getting used to learning how to use it.
Yeah. And I think, it's one of those things, like the more you use it, the more you kind of understand like what you want it to be like for your preferences. And there's tons of ways you can personalize Copilot through like custom instructions, prompt files, things like that to make it fit your workflow. But to your exact points, like you learn, like I use this every day, like Copilot in general, and I learn something new every day. There's always new features coming out. So you know, if you used this a month ago even and haven't touched it since then, it's gonna be different.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. And prompt files is something I just started using based on the agent day that talks. So, you know, you watch things like the VS Code live stream, you sort of pick up new tricks and tips, and we're all just trying to keep up with this.
We are, yeah.
This train that's just rolling through. It's like,
exactly.
I just started using this model. Like, oh, this is a great model to use. Let me try this.
Right.
So yeah. Cool. So yeah, so it's ran all these queries that are like, you can see how, you know, complicated these screen real estate and stuff that are, you know, using all these complicated joins. And it's just deriving all of this by like looking at the schema, understanding databases, understanding Postgres, and it's able to translate that into these complex queries, which is really awesome.
Yeah. And like database has never been like my strong suit. And so like things like this, I'm looking at, I'm like, oh, that, like if I'd had Copilot back when I first started developing 10 years ago and like trying to understand this, I feel like that just would have like helped so much. Like obviously you still need to understand like, okay, what is a join? When would you do that? But just things like, oh my God, what is the syntax for this? That you used to have to like go and Google and go on Stack Overflow and be like, what is the way to do this? And now you can have something that gets you there. Totally. Yeah.
I recently leaned on Copilot so hard to contribute to a code base that I really like didn't it's in a language that isn't my first primary language. It was using pretty advanced concepts, and so it was like before I even tried to do anything, it's like explain this. What is this code base? How are durable tasks being used across this? And it really, yeah. I mean, I was able to make a pull request on the project like in a week. In a way that I just would not have been.
Right. You just wouldn't. It'd be a non-starter before you'd be like, yeah, I'm lost. Like, and you give up. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going, and you know, I love these like sleeps that it does while it asks me to confirm. It's like, you don't need to do that. It's kind of adorable. Let me go to sleep for a little bit. But it looks like it. Let's see what the code it wrote just to kind of show that. And I think, yeah, this new API endpoint, right? Pretty intense query that I did not have to think hard about, right there. And so, you know, and then we can say, okay, are there indexes that we can add to the Postgres database to speed this up? And I did this in another setting, and it absolutely checks what, you know, indexes exist, runs, explain, analyze on the query, is able to really not just make the queries, but like make them performant, make them, you know, really sort of production grade. And yeah, SQL is something I've written over the decades, like a bunch, but I am not that good at it. And now I really am because of Copilot. So that's great.
That's awesome. Yeah. It just takes you to that next level and just really skills you up.
Totally. So it looks like it's, you know, it's going to be testing and things like that. So, but I think that's kind of the main thing that I wanted to show, the ability to just like edit code with that database context awareness.
That's awesome. Yeah. We got a lot of love. People were saying great stream during your demo. So very cool stuff. Is there anything else you want to show kind of before we wrap this segment up?
No,
okay,
I think that's it.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I'm so glad that you came on, Rob, because you know, we've been talking about MCP nonstop today, basically, but that's not the only way that you can get more context into agent mode. You know, the whole concept of extending agent mode and why MCPs are so powerful is the same reason that extensions can be so powerful in agent mode as well, right? It gives you more of that context. It just brings you into your development workflow, and you just have it just unlocks so many new paths. So it's really helpful to hear from your team's perspective how you ended up going the extension route, and just letting people know that that, look at some of your favorite extensions. You might be surprised some might actually be doing this already. If you are an extension author, definitely check out our language model tools API docs so that you can see if it makes sense to add this functionality to your own extension. And Rob, I believe you're back in 2 weeks on the 26th on the live stream,
Yeah.
so we can do an even deeper dive, right?
For sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
It's
I'll
just
perfect timing. Someone said barely caught the end of this. This is fascinating stuff already. We'll come back in 2 weeks. Well, first of all, this will all be on demand, so you can rewatch this stream itself. But in 2 weeks, Rob's going to be back, and we're going to be jamming out even longer to kind of dive into this extension even more.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much for
right.
having me on. It's been really awesome and really awesome to catch this live stream and learn so much. So thank you for the live streams.
Well, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you in just a couple weeks. Have a good one, Rob.
See you guys.
All right, so an exciting stream already. We have one more demo that is extra exciting to show off. So we're going to pivot a little bit back to MCP, and we're going to bring Sam from GitHub on because there's some stuff that literally just was announced, right, Sam?
Yeah, literally during I think the last 30 minutes, actually.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. So, okay, Sam, I think this is your first time on the stream. So if you want to do a quick intro, and then we can talk about what that cool announcement is.
Hey, so yeah, I'm Sam. I've been leading development on the GitHub MCP server, which I think a fair few people have used. And we've been working behind the scenes on trying to make a production-ready remote MCP server. And we've been trying to make sure we fulfill the auth specification. And today, finally, with the launch of vscode support as well for the auth, as you saw Tyler talk about earlier, now we've released it to the public. And
I feel like I need a drum roll. I don't know if you guys can hear this. I'm drum rolling.
So yeah, I mean, it's a huge deal for us. I think the story is like the installation story is so much easier. I think now you'll start seeing MCPs end up in mobile environments because the runtime was prohibitive, but now there is no runtime, and also the open auth flow is just really smooth. So I was actually just thinking, rather than talk too much about it, maybe I can install it and
let's do it.
Let's play. Like, there's been so many amazing demos and some really serious tech stuff. So I feel like I'm going to go a little bit light, and let's try and let the GitHub MCP server kind of do some vibe coding for us. So
let's do it.
All right, that was it. I install it.
It's
popped me back. It's popped me back into a window you can't see, but I'm just going to click. Well, you know what? I'll move it to my other screen so that you can see what it's doing. And you can authorize your orgs, but in this case, for my demo, I'm just going to stay as just my account. And that's it. I can see 53 tools here. And one thing I'm going to call out very early on is that we have also introduced, sorry, let me find my window. We've introduced the ability to tailor make your kind of selection of tools as well, because we know we have a lot of tools and sometimes models get confused. So I'm going to go and apply that right now just to show you kind of, like, suppose I'm worried about things and I don't want to let it write issues or anything, I can do that. And as soon as it runs, you'll, there you go. Now it only has 29 tools.
Would you mind zooming in a couple levels if you can?
That's no problem at all, but I might need to make.
Just
the file
adjustments. Yeah.
And then,
one more level if you can. Sorry, it just gets a little tiny for people. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And then I can actually also, like, suppose I only want read-only issues tools. I can just set it up like that, and now I've only got 4 tools. So and like we've allowed it to kind of be composed like that. So for people who kind of want to choose their own adventure and customize the experience, this is one way you can do it. You could install each one as a separate server, and we even gave one-click installs in the documentation so that people can do that straight into VS Code. And for my demo, though, I am going to let it, sorry, I'll use the whole thing. And now we should be back with...
Very cool. I love that you can tailor that just from that URL and get that experience right off the box. You don't have to worry about, okay, I just have this one thing and now I need to tailor it to what I need to do. It's like you basically already thought of these scenarios that people want to have. So
it's something that we had to think about a lot as to how we would bring that feature that we already have in our local server to a remote audience. So, you know, like in the end, it seemed like, oh, well, let's just kind of make them like different servers. And yeah, I think so far I found that to work great. So I'm going to just have a little play now with the server. So you saw how easy it was to install. I literally just clicked accept and now I'm in here, and how easy it was to configure. Let's just get it to try and use some GitHub data to first, it always looks in the current code space, but live demos, eh?
I know. It's got to happen.
I didn't actually look at the thing. Maybe it doesn't exist on that branch, although maybe I've also got a typo. But anyway, like let's just try. Oh, I don't know if there's some operational thing going on. I would like to check.
It's always, we were saying this literally at the very first demo of this, we were like, the demo gods are even scarier with AI.
Yeah. You never know, but yeah, no, the server's running. As for why I was getting a problem there, I have no idea, but yeah. Anyway, it's
Tyler says it's because you need to authorize the GitHub org for that to happen.
Oh, sorry. Actually, I wouldn't have, but because I am a member of the GitHub org, I do. Yeah, sorry. If my token had actually been an SSO'd one into GitHub, then it would have let me. But most people could do this because it's also a public repo. But sorry. So let me try something else anyway. So here is an actually public resource, and thanks for the the assist. That makes sense. Normally I do work SSO'd into GitHub, but I just didn't want to accidentally
do something. Yeah. I get it.
So yeah, I mean, I've just pulled down an image file, and that loaded, and I'm going to advertise to everyone as well. Like the VS Code release literally just dropped that supports this, so I also need to, but you all need to update VS Code to get the features, and you'll see a nice screenshot down here if you do.
Oh, nice. Yeah, like literally like 20 minutes ago, I think it dropped.
So anyway, let's try and get to do something cooler, because I feel like this is kind of low hanging fruit. Oh, and actually, while that's kind of churning away, I can hit preview, because I realize it did make a fun little markdown page, and it made a broken mermaid chart, which is actually the first time that's happened to me. Yeah, sorry, it's... Oh, did I ask it about me again? Sorry, let's just... I should have SSO'd my token and been brave.
Yeah, I know. There's always I feel like live streams just bring a whole extra thing where I want to make sure I'm not doing something that I do not want shared. And so you try to scale it back, and then you're like, oh no, I actually needed that.
Yeah, I want to do a good demo, but I don't want to be fired. It's kind of always
right.
trade-off.
It's a trade-off, right?
So anyway, you can see the detail. It has succeeded and got all the information about some pull requests, and now it's made some really interesting file. Let me move this out of the way a little bit, and I'll say I'll keep it, and we'll have a little look I did install the HTML preview, so I should also be able to just preview it right here. There you go. It just made all of the styling up. It did all this, and it's made a little thing for each of the last.
Yeah, the nice little hover and everything. Oh.
Yeah, it's quite cute, and like I mean it opened it on my other window, but the links are really real. You know, it's just a real website.
Right.
Now, if I take it, I guess, to a next level and say, I'm going to ask it to actually just put it up in a brand new public repo. Let's see how it goes.
That's quick.
Yeah, there we go. And so it asks me, because it's actually creating a repo now. And I also asked it to assign GitHub Copilot coding agent to a first issue as well. So hopefully it's now thinking about it, and then it's going to open an issue for us.
Oh, it's so cool seeing all these pieces come together. And like, especially I think sometimes it's hard, like, you know, we were talking about how quickly everything's moving in this space, that you just think of all these different announcements as like separate entities. So it's really cool when you see them all come together in one demo, right? Where in VS Code, you're showing this MCP server, you're talking about Copilot coding agent. Like it's all meant to just help the developer in their workflow and to speed it up and to bring it all into your loop, you know? And I think sometimes it's hard to like not think of them as all of these separate things that don't interact.
Well, that's exactly the kind of area that we're trying to innovate. So if I open this, we see this just basic page here, and I think we can also, if we view raw, I think we can probably even, you know, see the code it made. But if I open my issues now, you're going to see this cool one that's been created, and Copilot's already working on it.
Very cool.
And there's already a work in progress PR, and you know, we can probably come back to it later and see what it did. But and this didn't even have a local repository, so you could have used this from non-coding environments as an MCP as well, and still end up with this result, which I think is just kind of, it's mind-blowing to be like.
It is mind-blowing. And someone literally just asked in the chat, do you think agents will be given more autonomous powers, like creating issues and PRs without developers being as much in the loop? And so, you know, we literally just saw that with how Copilot coding agent can integrate with these different workflows, and you can have that bigger impact there with those agents.
Yeah, no, really, I think it's quite amazing that like how autonomous things are getting, and like an area that we're also trying to quickly iterate on and innovate on is security and privacy in light of that, and governance, because these things are amazing and they can do a lot. GitHub Coding Agent actually also uses the GitHub MCP server, but it uses a token that's scoped to an individual repo and has a subset of tools that they specifically allow, because it's a completely autonomous agent. And you can also integrate MCPs with Coding Agent too. But we used GitHub MCP server to assign Coding Agent, which is now using the MCP server.
Yeah, it's all building on each other.
So I mean, I think it's amazing some of the stuff it works. And actually, one thing we've got brewing, it's not ready for release yet, but I was told I could talk about it, is one of the things people are super worried about is token leakage, because while VS Code allows you to store secrets securely and not just have them plain text, like in a lot of these kind of MCP environments, people are putting plain text credentials in their MCP config. So like what's going to happen, somebody knows what the file name is normally called, does some prompt injection attack on like maybe a public issue or some other source from another MCP, and then next thing you know, it's reading the contents of that and then posting it up on the internet somewhere.
Right.
So we don't want that. And we've begun a collaboration with secret scanning, and I used to actually work in advanced security, so it's close to my heart. But we've already got a proof of concept going, integrating secret scanning with all of the input and output to the server, and that can only live on our remote server for technical constraints. But we're really hoping to sort of change the game on security in a lot of ways.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that insight, because I know that I mean, that's always one of the top things that come up anytime you hear MCP, right? So it's really great to hear, looking forward, what the team is thinking about and considering to help address that. Because to your point, like it's going to happen, so we need to put in safeguards to see how we can make it not happen.
Yeah. I think safeguards is the key word, and we're also we've been working on the spec. Den, who was on earlier, has been reviewing some of my own contributions, and we also have regular discussions on how we can improve security. And we're also trying to have a look at how we can do tool selection scenarios as well. So let me just I'm going to quickly stop the remote server because I'm going to have a different kind of play. So the local server is going to get a small bit of attention now because we don't have the dynamic tool selection feature on the remote server yet, although we will release it at some point soon. But I wanted to let's have fun. I saw people changing the models earlier, and I also quite like to. So yeah, now I'm just going to ask it to try and summarize my work. I don't know how much of my work it actually has access to, but it's got no tools available. It's only got 3 tools right now, and those tools are designed to let it enable other tools. So it's just going to read some files and spin a bit, and then hopefully it'll start.
Oh, while this is kind of thinking, you mentioned at the very start, like what remote MCP servers can enable, and you kind of mentioned like mobile and things like that. So do you kind of see like this being a key use case that people would be using this for?
I think that we're just going to start seeing agents crop up everywhere, and people are going to want to power them in all sorts of ways. And I think even the discovery of tools like it can totally change the game. We could hoist it up to different levels. Right now I'm trying to get it to do it on my local code, but like on my local MCP server, but it could also, go to like a registry level or something. So finally, it's decided to enable the issues tool set. And if we go back to our MCP settings, we'll see like actually it started enabling some additional tools just by itself. And yeah, I'm just going to let it spin and see what it does. I want to just also chat. So I don't know if there's any questions, but this is kind of one of those where I'll let it work.
You let it do, and then you go get coffee. Yeah. There is one question that's more about agent mode in general that I can answer. Someone asked what's happening with the continue to iterate thing. So there's actually basically like if you go through enough requests, Copilot be like, hey, you want to keep going? It's kind of like when you've watched enough Netflix episodes, it's like, you want to keep watching? So it asks you to do it. There's actually a setting in VS Code now called agent max request. And you can bump that up if you want to. If you feel like you're seeing this happen too often, you can bump that up. If you're like, no, just stop asking me this. Just bump it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's there's a fine line between kind of paid for usage and limited token counts, and I think that's also one of the areas that we hope to improve in the GitHub MCP server is reducing token count. Like just today, I improved the get file endpoint to actually always return just text when it gets a text-based file, so it doesn't waste tokens on base64 decoding. And those are all the sorts of things that you don't want to have to think about, but the tools need to be incredibly smart. The context you get from your MCPs needs to be so precise to the tasks you're trying to achieve that it's not wasteful, and making stuff that seamless is hard. So I don't see this as like something we can just achieve, but it's like it's a kind of North Star of like what we'd like is a seamless experience with the GitHub platform.
Right.
And every day.
on that note, where would you recommend if people have feedback, I guess specifically about the remote GitHub MCP server? Is there a repo where they could file issues? Or just give feedback.
I would say just go to the github.com/github/github-mcp-server, and the remote server is kind of related in that it shares all the tool code with the open source one. The only reason we did a separate repo for it was because it's mostly just hosting code for our internal Kubernetes and stuff, and it's not really interesting to collaborate on. It's all very specific to us, but the open source server is where it all happens. It's where we discuss features, and we're open to discussing. If the remote server does something differently, we're open to discussing it there too. It's not something that we're we're just precious about encouraging community engagement and trying to start conversations, because this tech changes every day. I think that's what I really wanted to say. There's absolutely no reason to be shy if you have some hot takes or you have some thoughts or problems. We really want to enable people's workflows, and for that we need to know.
We need to know. Yeah, right. Yeah, I always tell people that we can't help if we don't know that that's even a scenario that y'all are interested in. So yeah, definitely a huge plug for that. And obviously GitHub is huge on community, so it's great to get that feedback.
Yeah, I also really curious because it doesn't seem to be doing quite what I expected, which is weird. I think it's probably actually trying to read the files and getting segued from what I asked it to do.
It kind of is going off on a loop. I think someone asked that earlier. They're like, how come agent mode just goes off sometimes? And it's honestly, sometimes you just stop and restart. That's the answer. If you see it just kind of going on a tangent, be like, hey, let's refocus and get to the point.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, there's a problem in general, a sort of conceptual one, where it can't really tell the difference between sort of information and instructions, and that's frequently a source of agent confusion. It's also the cause of a lot of security issues, because you put information in and then the agent treats the information as instructions, and actually you had only intended it as a kind of advisory piece of information. Sorry, I'm just going to delete all these files because it feels like it's trying way too hard to read them. I'll try one more time, but anyway, in the end it doesn't matter entirely. I just kind of want to see if it has some fun. I've had some really great, you know what, I might actually just skip, because I've run this about 8 times and I normally end up with some really fun examples. So I'm just gonna go and look at some closed issues.
Oh yeah,
I did one literally this afternoon, and it just did it, and this is what it created.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the things it picks up on.
Yeah.
It just came up with this. I deliberately kind of made it a very loose prompt to see what visualizations it would kind of vibe.
Right.
And these are the things it came up with, and
very cool.
I've done it so many times. It also tried to put a sort of format string JavaScript data in, which didn't work for a GitHub issue. But it's I get tremendous joy personally from just trying to encourage the creativity and trying to push it as hard as it will go, and just see, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like daily you can just be surprised, wow, I really did not think it was gonna do that, and then it's wow, it did. And then sometimes you're wow, yeah, that that's not exactly what I thought, but those moments that you have where it just generates this whole thing, that is so cool to see.
So yeah, I mean, I've just had, I think it was covered. Almost everyone I hear talking about agents and MCP that's a kind of software engineer just has this new joy in their work, and I experienced that too. It's enabled me to just play, and I also get a real kick. Internally next week, I'm also training some people, just anyone who wants to, on building their own MCP servers.
Cool.
like one of the things I'm super excited about is that VS Code has this full spec compliance now as well. So the last time I did this, which was only a couple of months ago, it was like it was only really tools that worked, and now there's like sampling and things like that, which is just amazing. And I really I don't even know kind of where to start. I just like you can enable such crazy workflows. I almost don't want to give advice. I kind of want to let people have crazy ideas and then just see what happens if they
don't
try
even
and
give people the box, like just see what people come up with, right?
So my vibe coding issue creator did, I think, yeah, there you go. Here's what it just generated right now.
Nice.
Indeed, those were some early, also vibe coded from a really long prompt MCP starter repos. And it's just making all this stuff up.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of detail, it's built in like timeline chart.
I know.
And actually, the GitHub celebration is right because our launch was today. But yeah.
That's very cool. And one thing you're talking about just with like the joy, like just hearing so many developers talk about the joy of like seeing this happen. And I was talking with someone about that yesterday, about how it's really cool for new developers too, who like maybe before would have to go through like a lot of that grind to like really like feel that joy until they like understood it. And it's like now, I'm not saying you still don't need to learn the fundamentals, but with this, you get to kind of get to that moment of joy quicker. And I think that that's so cool that more people are able to experience that, both non-coders, people learning how to code, people very experienced in coding. It's just bringing more of that joy. I think that's really cool to bring it.
Yeah, weirdly, like I feel like if you ask developers what they wanted, they would ask for like a faster Vim or something like the older ones. And it's kind of, actually, these paradigms are causing like some of us who've been working in the industry for like tens of years to have to adapt fast. And I think our CEO Thomas of GitHub says like talks about how junior developers are not they're not a mistake, they're like a real investment. We're not replacing them. Like I literally work with a tremendous team of people, and including several really newly hired junior developers, and the stuff that they're able to do and unblock themselves on today compared to even a year ago.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing to see. Yeah.
And like, like I'm not great at Custo and KQL, but I know some of it, and I know enough about data structures and, SQL and things to know what I want. And my dashboarding game has also just like gone like through the roof because
skyrocketed. Yeah. I
just keep iterating and asking it to like tweak some query and like have a look at the data, try again until I get the sort of perfect chart for what I want to do. And I think that's it. It's you don't have to learn every domain specific language anymore. You just don't. And I wouldn't go as far as to say why bother. Like you should follow your passion, but that's the whole point. Like follow your passion and lean on the agent for the stuff you're not super passionate about. And like don't imagine a world where stuff is going to be done for you. It's the wrong way to think about it. Like I've been thinking about this one particularly a lot, and it's like you actually are. Like the baseline is kind of what the agent can do for you these days. Like more and more people just have access to that. So it's like, well, so how do you differentiate? What do you actually do? And the answer is kind of, you have to try and learn how to interact with these tools to be even better at things than you were, and kind of maximize your joy at work and maximize the quality of the output. Like ask for feedback. Don't just it's not only a generative tool, and calling it generative AI is true to an extent because it has it generates like text with LLMs, but that's more technically about how it works than about what you should use it for. And I think like often like people start by, I asked it to do this thing, it didn't really work, and then they get a bit disappointed, or the agent started looping. So yeah, I would just say like just try and find ways to do better work than you would have done, like spend longer, spend ages crafting a prompt until you get better at prompting a model, and you'll end up producing like better work, faster work.
And I think I think it's interesting you bring up like get better at like that prompting. I think that it's forcing you to also like be better at describing what you're trying to get to, and be better at like formulating, okay, this is what I want to see. You know, it's not just semantics, it's about, you still need that problem solving and those big ideas and that creativity and then agent mode can help the agent, Copilot, whatever agents you're using can help you along the way to get there.
And I think a great way to practice is actually with GitHub's coding agent, because the idea that you craft a kind of an issue as a prompt, and therefore you're kind of like the information you want the model to know, the kind of QA sort of requirements you have for it, like how is it going to validate its work, what product input and what domain knowledge kind of are going to help it to achieve the task. Like if it's a simple task, it can be a short issue, but like it can do some really quite impressive, like large pieces of work if you really start working on like how you can write a one-shot issue that can get it really far. And I just think bringing that back to kind of agent mode, and also being able to call coding agent from the GitHub MCP server, it's like if you start getting better at like, well, what do I have to stuff in this thing? Like even it can be a stream of consciousness. It doesn't even matter. It's like the models are quite good at extracting the value out of it, but you do have to give it and the discipline to kind of like get better at that process. Like once you start, it's like everyone's, you know, like I keep saying, is the joy comes back. Like if you were getting a bit bored of software development or whatever, like
uninspired, I feel like it brings the inspiration back.
Yeah, I've heard so many people like who said, I wasn't really excited by like the crypto phase or like, you know, NFTs or things, suddenly being like, you know what, this feels like the advent of the web level exciting. And the fact that I get to work on it with my team kind of on a daily basis, and you know, we're feeding into the specifications that are trying to kind of design really futuristic stuff. It's really an amazing experience.
It is, it's such an exciting time to be in tech, and just to hear everyone's perspective on it, and to have you on things like this, to hear not just about the work that y'all are doing, but the work that y'all are prioritizing, like the secret scanning that you brought up. It's all just, like you said, a really exciting time to be in tech. Cool. All right, Sam, are there any other things you want to show, as if this wasn't exciting enough that this remote GitHub MCP server is now in public preview? And then I know you shared a little bit about what the team's going to be working on. Are there any final thoughts you have?
I think I'd encourage people like go try install the remote server, and if your client doesn't support it yet, go install the local server. Like, you know, we can unblock you from using it, and like have a look at what tools we have. Like I would say, just try coding and realizing like, oh, I can reference things that exist on GitHub, and it will just go and get them for me. And like just like try coding and developing with it on. Like I didn't. Oh, you know what? Actually, there's one tiny last thing I'll show in before I stop, just because like it's just like a fun thing we added recently. But like, let's see if it's gonna go off and do it. I need to check if my local server setup is actually running. Just trying to find code first, but hopefully it will. You know, I might also switch models.
I feel like some models are more prone to certain asks.
I'll tell you what, while it's doing all that, I think I'm also going to switch back to our remote server because I can. There we go. That's now running. And I'm just going to stop this session, start a new one, and yeah. let's just see. Hopefully it'll spin up and just do it. Yeah. I mean, it's a simple task, but it's like you've got management of all these various things, and you can use that to then like, I don't know, like, which should I work on next? You know, like you can start managing things like what work you have to do and what people are asking of you, and you know, it's told me like some advice, but you could just kind of like, obviously also I'm not logged into work, so it's not showing everything, or like I have quite a lot of notifications,
Right.
but not just two. But yeah, like I love the idea that you're just having this conversational existence with GitHub where you're looking like, what notifications do I have? Like maybe one day the server could even, if you're connected, kind of push them out to you as well. And
that would be awesome. Yeah.
It can just know that you've got stuff to do and like finish what task you're doing and be like, oh, like you've just got a review on this PR now. Like, should I merge it? And yeah, like
it's almost like your own little, it's like your own assistant then at that point. Like keeps you on top of things and make sure things don't fall through the cracks with your code. That's really cool.
Yeah, and we, you know, I mean, we have a multi-step PR review thing as well, where you can ask it to like create a pending pull request, and then you can start adding comments, like by just telling the agent to comment on certain lines, or do, you know, like or give it a kind of general opinion and let it create the comments. Right. And then submit it as like an accept or reject or comment when you're ready. Like, so I think I've shown enough to know that, you know, the better and better all these things get, the more like all of the features of GitHub, like you can also get your secret scanning alerts and code scanning alerts, and then try and get them to work on it. You can actually ask Copilot to go and review your code as well, and the MCP server will go and trigger a Copilot code review. There's just, you know, like I said, we've got over 50 tools already, and it's only scratching the surface of functionality that GitHub offers. So I think once we solve those things, like how to help models navigate crazy numbers of tools, and once we kind of improve like the smartness of the context it gets, then I just think that loop's going to speed up and be more smooth. And you're just going to be in this wonderful world where like GitHub's kind of more like a friend than a platform. And you talk to it, it goes off, codes things, you can review them, you can also write code. You know, Copilot's helping you with the things that you're enjoying building and prototyping, and you know, then you can see when things are done. Like you can draw from so many places. It's overwhelming at first, but once
it is. Yeah, but I mean, just to think of all the possibilities that this unlocks, like even just like from conversations with you, like I feel like we're used to kind of be like, oh, this is the current state of things. Like the cool things about this is like all the state of things that this unlocks, and yes, to your point, like there's definitely like problems we need to solve in the space to get there. Like we're not quite there for some of these possibilities, but like it's just so exciting to think about all the potential of what this can do.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect note from my side to finish on. I just you know, I encourage people to experiment and definitely try our server, and definitely go to our repository and open issues if you have comments. And I think we'll start using discussions as well to kind of get a bit more community engagement on like future plans or things as well, because like, you know, this is a ride we're all on together, and nobody can predict where we're going to be. You know, like I think maybe 3 or 4 months ago, like Anthropic had a sort of a reference GitHub MCP server that they had built, and you know, we didn't have one internally, and then it was actually a sort of side project at first, like, oh, should we try and get this made? And then gradually it's consumed more and more of my life, to the point where it's been dominating it. We're having major product releases of it, and I'm here talking to you today, you know, which is just like stuff historically, for me at least, didn't tend to move quite that.
No, you like kind of knew what the next like few months at least would look like, and now it's like right to your point, 3 months ago, just something you were investigating, and now it's full blown public preview, and now like think what in 3 months we're gonna have you back on. Who knows what we're gonna be talking about then?
Oh, I'd be excited to come back. But thank you so much for taking the time to have me on.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Super exciting stuff. Everyone, go check out the remote GitHub and.
Hey, Tyler.
Hello. It seems like Olivia had some network issues.
I wasn't sure if I was kicked out or Olivia was kicked out, but it looks like I'm still on. Well,
that was a really cool demo. I've been using the GitHub remote MCP server, like testing all of the auth stuff quite a bit recently. So it's been super cool to use. I guess while we wait for Olivia to come back, I wasn't quite expecting getting thrown back onto the stream, but here we are. I was gonna just say that one of the things that I used it for recently was, we're on track for like open sourcing the Copilot chat extension in VS Code, and so we have just like got a lot of issues and a lot of sub issues to make sure everything's ready before we like actually hit the button to open source that stuff. And for a couple of these tasks, we'll have issues, and then those have sub issues that are assigned to specific people. I just used the GitHub MCP server and said, hey, go look at the things that are assigned to me in this issue, right? And take a look, do what you think is